and leveraging it somewhere else. So we don't always do hybrid, but it really makes a difference when you're together for advocacy. And we always do hybrid. We always meet together. The people who are online are going to try and join with us and ask some questions as well. So if it gets a little clunky, you all will forgive us, and people here will forgive us as well. They're hearing this banter now, but then at exactly 9 o'clock, a couple minutes before 9, I'll shut up for a second. You don't have to. And then I'll start with a welcome officially right at 9 o'clock, because these do live on forever on the Women's Fund website and on our YouTube. So what does that mean? It means that these trainings, we have them accumulated. We've had years of trainings, and a lot of that basic stuff that we started with years ago is still on there. So I'll be repeating that again, just so everybody knows, but we want to be used, leveraged. I'll say it again, so I don't want to bore you now. Everybody get up and down. Eat when you want. The bathrooms are over here to the left. There's not, you walk out this door and is that blue or wherever? Yeah, through the double doors and to the left. You still have a couple minutes, right? So then I'm going to talk about what's here physically. Danny, hopefully later on with the intern, you'll be able to, near the end, share the digital resources. But what I say is that the Women's Fund is a team sport, right? We come together in coalitions, but we come together with the idea of acting, right? There's something that you can do. So this campaign, we're working with over 108 organizations and entities are working with us in #OneTeam. Consider us Switzerland. We have an MOU that's signed with It's a Penalty, that's the organization that works with FIFA and the Super Bowl and gets these players PSAs. But we're here to work for you, right? For the commission, or the mayor has opened up all the county resource centers to have places to pick up the posters that you have here. We work really closely with the state attorney, who's the lead for so many different things. So what do I mean about it's a team sport? We have flyers here. We have a lot of them in English. We have a few in Creole, but we have a lot more in Spanish and in different formats. We just don't have them here today. So Bert, raise your hand over there. Say hi. Over where Bert is, there are stacks of stuff. So at any time, I want you to get up and move and pick them up. If you can use one poster in your office, great. If you can use a whole stack, take them. We have more. We paid for them. The Miami Foundation paid for some as well, right? These assets are digital, but they're also physical. And we would love you to take them not only to your own entities, but your spheres of influence. Make sense? So please take them. And we've got more. And Danny, wait. Danny can coordinate with you to get you more. Spanish, Creole, and English, more than one format. It's almost 9 o'clock, so I have to be quiet when you tell me.
About 30 people on the Zoom.
Good morning, 30 people on Zoom. About 30 people? And it's only a minute too, so you're the smarty pants ones. Get to watch me doing the silly stuff. You don't have to whisper, you can talk. And it's exactly 9 o'clock, so I get to welcome you online, here in person, and those of you who will be seeing this advocacy training online soon to your Women's Fund Miami-Dade. One of the things we say here is that your focus is our power. The more we focus, in this case, especially on women and girls, because we can see what is working and what is not working for women and girls, we end up lifting all boats. We at the Women's Fund know that many of our colleagues put on other lenses or lift other boats. And so that's why we come here to work together. All of us are advocates, and your Women's Fund advocates for a lot of things because we've got data and research. We've got relationships with many of you in the community that guide us to action areas. So in a moment, after doing some welcomes, I'm gonna pass you on to Viviana, who'll tell you about what we're advocating for, so you can join us, your voices in advocating for what you coincide with us on, right? Which I think probably for all of you here online and in person, probably everything that we're working on you care about as well. But this is not at all about advocating only for these issues. This is about your voice. This is about your understanding of your voice. Everybody who's online, knowing that you need to know who your commissioner is, you need to know who your representatives are, and you need to know that all of them work for you. And they want you to focus because that's also their power to get things done and to get them done right. So the work that we do, none of it could happen if we weren't able to show up every day. And I wouldn't be able to show up every day if it weren't for our amazing board of directors. And many of it, wave your hand. Now you can't all see them, but we got a couple board members here. We also have our Marilyn Gladstone, our founder, who is a big fan of you all. We have Commissioner Cohen-Higgins represented here today in the House. And I don't know who else is online because I haven't seen it, but we often have different offices of our elected officials. We absolutely need and value their engagement. This is this amazing board. And then who needs fuel? All of us need fuel. And fuel means funding, and we have two programs. We have a grand mission that people donate a grand up to almost $8,000, and other folks who are capable of fueling our work and synergizing and synchronizing with what we get to do. They get to fuel our mission together. And you all know we definitely could not do that without you all. So I'm gonna pass it on to you, Viv. I'm going to pass it on to you, Viv. And Viviana is not only our Senior Director of Research, she used to be Research and Data, Research and Policy as well. So, Viv, focus.
Thank you. Good morning, everybody. So before I introduce myself, I want to give a huge shout out to our event collaborators, Miami-Dade College, FIU, the Maurice A. Ferrer Institute for Civic Leadership, as well as the YWCA and Dale Miami, who are feeding us this morning. Thank you, Dale. Is it working? Hold on. Yes, okay, there we go. For those of you who are on Zoom, we want to hear from you. We will have 3 polls go up. So please make sure, this is my camera. Hi people. Make sure to fill out the polls. Also, if you have any questions or comments, we are continuously checking the chat. Oh, there goes our first poll. And so you can use the chat to post any questions, also the Q&A, and we're monitoring that. Does it go? Do I need to get closer? Okay. There you go. Danny, can we move the, hold on. Because the people here get to do the poll too. Oh, get out your phones, everybody. Scan the QR code. We want to hear from you. And then I'll move on. See, you thought you didn't have to do the poll. You do. We need the data. As the research person says, we need the data. All right, all good to go? Perfect. I think we need to point this over here. Okay, there we go. Okay. All right, now formally introducing myself. For those of you that do not know me, my name is Viviana Alvarado Pacheco. I am the Senior Director of Research and Collective Impact here at the Women's Fund. And I'm going to be giving a very brief overview of the things that we're advocating for here at the Women's Fund. They might very much align with what you're advocating for as well, or they might not, and that's okay. As Mario mentioned, we're here to educate you all, to train you all a little bit on how you do advocate for what you think is important, what your priorities are. But if in the mix you also advocate for what the Women's Fund stands for, hey, that's great. So can you just do the next slide, please? Thank you. Okay, so here are our 3 issue areas. We're looking at, first off, supporting early education initiatives that empower women's economic mobility. We're doing this, and what I've done here is I grabbed a couple of more of the high level policy areas. These are our 3 policy areas, and 2 of the things that we're trying to advocate for. So in the early childhood education space, we're advocating for the increased eligibility threshold and funding for the school readiness program, which is a Florida-run program. And then we're also wanting to incentivize employer participation in the early learning sector. We do this through business-to-business models. We have a couple that we're advocating for and wanting the community to know about. If you have questions about that, I can talk your ear off later. And so that's the focus around early childhood education. We also, our second issue area is improving maternal and infant health outcomes by providing access to quality reproductive health care and peri and postnatal care for all. What does this look like? This looks like expanding funding for midwifery and doula care within government programs. And also it looks like expanding the reach and work of AIM. AIM is the Alliance for Infant and Maternal Health Miami-Dade. If you have not heard about it, that is okay. It's one of our newer initiatives, and where we put to work our 4 core programs into improving maternal mortality rates, maternal morbidity rates, infant mortality, and preterm births, right? And this is a coalition of different types of stakeholders that deal in some type of way around maternal and infant health. And so we're wanting to expand that work here in Miami. And then last but not least, supporting initiatives that expand protections against gender-based violence. As some of you or the people here in the room can see, we have a campaign around human trafficking, preventing human trafficking, especially now during FIFA. And what this looks like also is standardizing the data collection and transparency across police departments so that we're able to gather a lot of this data that is gendered or disaggregated by race and ethnicity. And then it also looks like deploying a countywide gender-based violence response plan in the works, right? These are all things that we are looking to achieve and striving for. And now I'm gonna walk you through, if you know your elected officials. This is just to ground us a little bit on what you're gonna be listening to today and knowing who you need to reach out to once you take this training, right? Then you're like, okay, I need to take action. Who is my elected official and how can I get in touch with them? So we're gonna start off with our amazing County Mayor, Daniela Levine Cava. I'm just going to go through a couple of the Miami-Dade delegation. So you have our mayor, Daniela. And here are our Miami-Dade Board of County Commissioners. Our Commissioner Chairman is Anthony Rodriguez, and our Vice Chairman is Keone McGee. These are some of the other ones, and they go by district. We have 13 districts. There we go. And these are some of our other, I'm not going to go one by one. I want you just to kind of see put a face to the name if you've heard these names before, and this is what they look like. And then you're going to find them. There's going to be a QR code at the end so you can find who your elected officials are. All right, next slide. All right, this is the Florida State Senators. These are amazing state senators. We have Chevron Jones, Jason Pisso, Brian Avila, Iliana Garcia, Alexis Calatayud, and Ana Maria Rodriguez. If you've heard these names before, this is what they look like. And also, Ana Maria Rodriguez is the chair of the Miami-Dade delegation. Thanks, Danny. Then we have the Florida House of Representatives. Felicia Simone Robinson, Fabian Basabe, Dottie Joseph, Tom Fabricio, Marie Paul Woodson, Wallace Aristide, Ashley Viola Gant, and David Borrero. We have a couple of, there's more representatives. Alex Bizzo, then District 113 is pending election for the midterms. Debbie Busata Cabrera, Omar Blanco, Daniel Perez, who is currently the Speaker of the House. He is important. Kevin Tabriz, Mike Redondo, Juan Carlos Porra, and James Vernon Mooney. Also, all of these people, the Florida House of Representatives, are up for election this coming November. All right. Then we have our U.S. Senators, Rick Scott, Ashley Moody. Ashley Moody's seat is up for election coming this November. So we have a lot of, I preface this, right, because elections are coming up. It's important for all of you to know who is going to be on the ballot. Also, I forgot to mention for the Board of County Commissioners, all of the even numbers are up for re-election, and also adding in District 5. So it's all of the even numbers and District 5. Okay. And then you have the House of Representatives. Frederica Wilson, Mario Diaz-Balart, Maria Elvira Salazar, Carlos A. Jimenez, also up for re-election. Also taking into notice, yeah, you can put the next one, thanks. So now you're gonna find your elected officials. If you don't know them, right, you might know them. And if you don't, you can scan the QR code. Also keeping in mind that there's been some redistricting happening that will affect the elections. But I'll give you all a minute also for those of you on Zoom, find your elected officials. And if you have any questions, or just keep them handy throughout your training so that you know who you need to be in contact with. Everybody got it? Looks like it. Okay, great. Some important dates as we're talking about elected officials. Voting, yay, the midterm year. So our primary elections are happening on August 18th, but here are some of the other dates to remember, which is July 20th is voter registration deadline. You have early voting starting August 3rd to the 16th. A vote by mail request deadline is August 6th. Check your vote by mail if you're planning to do that because they expired. You have to re-register to vote by mail. And then you also have the general elections happening on November 3rd, but the voter registration deadline is October 5th. The vote by mail request deadline is October 22nd. And then early voting starts on October 24th to November 1st. Keep the reminders, vote by mail. Ballots begin mailing approximately 40 to 50 days before elections. And then ballots may be returned by USPS by 7 p.m. on election day, received by 7 p.m. on election day. And then early voting sites, also election day polling locations. All right, and then that's me. If you have any questions, I'm going also for the people on Zoom, I'm going to be putting my email in the chat. And those of you that are here, I'm here, come talk to me.
And Vivi's going to help because Marcia is going to let you ask some questions, right? So Viv's not really going anywhere. Just to restate what Viv said before and what I said before, this is a participation sport. The Women's Fund is a participation sport, isn't it, RFE? We've got another board member in the house. So all of you online, I said before, it's a little bit clunky. We want your voices to be heard. So we will be monitoring the chat and questions. If you're here in person, speak up, don't be shy. If you've got something that's more than a yay or a nay or a color that Marcia asked you to shout out, just raise your hand and Viv or maybe I'll help her too if there are a lot of you. We'll come to you with a microphone. Why? Because if not, we're rude to those amazing people who are here online. There's the camera, right? You all are amazing, and they can't hear you all online if you don't use the microphone. So be nice, okay? Again, what Viv said, please fill in the polls, whether you're here or online. Please do the survey because you saw Viviana. She uses data. Oh, Mayor Levine Cava's office is also represented in the House as we've been going around. And welcome, Michelle Johnson. Thank you so much. So ready, set, go. I'm going to do what we always do is let our speakers introduce themselves, impossibly in the context of why they're here today. But I will let you know that Marcia has served as a board member in the past. She's always one of my bosses, somebody I go to for advice all the time, although she will tell you none of this, you have to get your own lawyer. But she, besides being professor and having an illustrious career in law, she's been our pro bono general counsel for the Women's Fund. So talk about things that we couldn't do without amazing resources. So with all that said, and much more to say, Marcia.
Right. Zoom people are up there. Good morning, everybody. My voice is not very strong, so I'm going to do my best to answer questions. But I commit to you that if I cannot answer your question, somebody is going to write it down, and I'm going to be sending you the slides, plus the cheat sheet, plus a little booklet, plus all kinds of other things. And for those of you in the Zoom room, you're my people. I have one of my former students here. He knows I love Zoom, so nice to see you guys. I hope I'm looking at the right place.
Yes.
Okay, good. Like, why is she looking over there? She doesn't love us. Okay, so, oh, I don't have the clicker. Let me grab the clicker. Okay. So I am a former board member, and the reason I'm a former board member is not that I didn't like the board, but because I wanted to make sure that I could also give legal advice, because that's what lawyers like to do. No matter where we are, we want to give advice. Conflict of interest, so I am the general counsel pro bono for the Women's Fund and 2 other nonprofits. But I am not the general counsel of the Women's Fund right now, except for me to be proud that Vivi didn't say anything I have to correct. Okay, because that would have been really awkward. Okay, so, but everything I say today is based on nothing to do with the Women's Fund or anybody else I represent, only my own views. And now I'm pressing the thing. All right. So there you go, a whole slide about it. I'm not your lawyer. I'm a lawyer, but not your lawyer. Please make sure you go and talk to your own legal counsel, general advice, issue spotting. And part of the reason it's hard to answer questions is that there's a lot of facts and circumstances. And for you to give me the facts and circumstances, that would take up 20 minutes. So I'm going to give general stuff, but if you have some more specific questions that I think I can answer that are not legal advice, somebody will take it down and I'm going to send a whole frequently asked questions thing. All right, this way. Okay, so what are we going to cover and what are we not going to cover? I'm going to be focusing on big picture national issues because we're talking about local elections like Vivi talked about, but of course we have national midterms coming up. So the focus of today is going to be what can you and can't you do in an election year, in a midterm election year? We'll talk a little bit about lobbying and advocacy, but I really want to kind of give you an idea of where some danger zones are. Show of hands, how many here are 501c3? Show of hands, how many are, or if you work with a 501c3, all the interns should be raising their hands. Okay. So anyone has elected 501h? Women's Fund people? We had a whole thing about it. Okay. Did you forget? Anybody say, I don't even know what 501h is? Okay, that's fine. Talk to your lawyer. All right. And anybody here will 501c4? C6? C4? C6? C5? Okay. All right. If you don't know what those are, you're still not going to know by the end of this presentation because I don't have that much time. Talk to your lawyer. Okay, so big picture, federal stuff, and there's also a whole local area. I'm not going to answer any of those local questions because we have Adele here, and even though I used to be a commissioner on the Commission on Ethics and Public Trust, I'm still not going to answer those questions because the rules were complicated. So I'm going to leave that for somebody else to deal with. So I want you to think, pick one word, talk amongst yourselves at your table for what does the advocacy situation look like in your view? Just one word, share it with somebody in your team, and you're just going to have to be by yourself. If you're on Zoom, my Zoom people type it in the chat. What is one word that you would use to describe the advocacy environment for nonprofits right now? You can be positive or not, up to you. All right, so I'm going to point at a table. This super talkative table over here, what's the word that you guys have? Dismal, difficult. The 3 Ds, dismal, difficult, and desperate. Are there any positive words in the chat? Instrumental, sustainable. So the people in the chat, they didn't have to drive through the traffic. Look how they're being positive, right? And some challenging. Okay, oh, a lot of challenging. There you go, frustratingly challenging. All right, great. So now let's go to the next slide. All right, don't take this away from my time because it's not moving. I don't know if it's not moving because the chat's there, but. All right. So when you think about the fact that we're in an election year and a lot of nonprofits will tend to pull back because you've heard there's all those concerns about lobbying, et cetera, it is really rare for an organization to lose its 501c3 status, but we are in a different time right now. So I want you to focus on, I am often that scary lawyer, and I might be that scary lawyer today only because I feel like you should be scared, right? But I want to give you kind of the do's and the don'ts. Looking this way. Okay, all right, this way. Where am I supposed to be finding it? I'm seeing that slide. All right, so there's a few buckets we want to think about. And by the way, part of the reason that I'm here is that I'm a graduate of both Harvard and Columbia, which is not said to be a flex. It's said to be said because those are nonprofits who have been spending millions and millions of dollars to defend themselves to keep their nonprofit status. And they are staffed by the most powerful lawyers in the world. Many of you don't have that ability to have those kinds of lawyers and legal fees. So when I go through some of these issues, it's not because it's abstract, it's because I think more than ever, we have to be extra careful, okay? Advocacy is fine, right? Advocacy is what you do most of your time anyway. Most organizations aren't really doing a lot of lobbying. Most of them are doing advocacy on the issues. Then there's lobbying, which is allowed. There's a myth that nonprofits can't lobby. We'll talk a little bit about what's allowed. And then there's the red line. No candidate endorsement, and we're going to talk what that looks like for a 501c3. This is one, again, where you don't really hear a lot of things happening, but we're not in normal times right now. Okay. So one of the things I came up with, I love an acronym, the lane check. I want you to stay in your lane. You will get all these slides, plus a cheat sheet and all kinds of stuff, right? The legal lane, what are you doing? So when you're about to post something, have a training, invite a candidate, do whatever it is, make a public statement, think about, are you educating? Are you advocating? Are you lobbying? Who's the audience? Is the next one. Are you talking to the general public or are you talking to lawmakers? Are you talking to members of your board? Are you naming candidates? This is the end. Are you naming candidates? Are you being neutral? What is the timing, right? So right now we're in June. The closer we get to election day, the more dangerous any kind of issue becomes, right? And then expenditures, which we're not going to spend much time on today at all. What are the funds that are paying for it, right? What has to be tracked? So think about it this way. We can lobby. Public charities can lobby, right? So the question is not really, can we lobby? Is this lobbying? What kind of lobbying is it? And how are we tracking it? Anybody that is using any kinds of fund for any kind of lobbying, whether it's direct or grassroots, and we'll talk about that in a second, should be tracking it. But when you're educating people about the heat index, for example, or human trafficking, that is not lobbying. That is what nonprofits are here to do, right? And there's never been a time when nonprofits have been more important. Okay. So we think about the lobbying, we've got the direct, Senator Schmo, I want you to vote no on SB 42, okay? Talking to the legislatures, their staff, anybody in their process about specific legislation. right? So it's not necessarily like, we really want to make sure that you protect the environment and help women and girls. A little different, okay? And you're reflecting a specific view. Grassroots, we're talking to the public. So we're talking directly to the legislator. Grassroots, we're talking to the public. Hey, write Senator Schmo, write your congressperson. You guys got the QR code from Vivi. Write to your congressman or your congresswoman about this issue. It's about specific legislation, okay? Protect women and girls is not specific legislation. You know, protect women and girls under SB 26 is specific legislation. And there must be a call to action. You're telling them to do something. Okay, so what Vivi did earlier when she said, here's the QR code, here are all the representatives, I'm glad she didn't say, and we love this one, not so much this one, because that would have been, again, awkward. Please don't do that, okay? Especially not in front of me, right? You know, she, look at it, she knows her lane, right? But it's that call to action, right? All of this is allowed, right? Because as nonprofits, you know the issues better than most people. You know the issues better than people in government. So your job is to help people understand what those issues are. I'm never going to get this, okay? Some things are not lobbying. Nonpartisan analysis. So the Women's Fund, although I'm not speaking for the Women's Fund, but the Women's Fund did a really great research project on heat index, right? And for women and girls and Florida in general, pregnant mothers, etc. All of these things are nonpartisan. It doesn't matter if you're Republican or Republican, as my friend Yolanda Jackson likes to say. You know, if you know her, you know. Doesn't matter what you are. It's a fair study. There's no call to action, right? Or it might be make sure your elected representatives know what's going on, but this is to educate you. That's okay. Technical assistance. Legislative body or committee says, we need you to give us some advice. This has to be in writing. It cannot be from Senator Schmo. It must be from the House of Representatives. It must be for the Ways and Means Committee, something like that, right? It's official. Broad problems. You're not backing a specific bill, but you're just talking about human trafficking. And then self-defense. Self-defense means that there is a law or a piece of legislation that literally could be an existential threat to your organization, but not budget issues. So if the government says we're cutting the budget for everybody related to XYZ, that is not a self-defense. But they're basically making the kind of organization illegal, that could be self-defense. Those are the exceptions when it's not lobbying. Again, talk to your lawyer, but not me. 501H, we're not even going to go into it. This is something, though, that the Women's Fund elected a few months ago, in a way, because it makes it more clear-cut what counts as expenses you have to be concerned about from a lobbying perspective versus not. Whether you have a 501H designation, you're still a 501c3, no matter what, keep track of the expenses, including the time that you're using for anything that you think might be lobbying, whether grassroots or otherwise. Any too far? Next slide, please. Thank you. This is the bright line we talked about before. No endorsements, no contributions, no using the resources, even in nonpartisan races. Next slide. Okay. So there was a bar association, and bar associations do this all the time. Bar association that put something out saying, here are all the candidates, here's who they are. So this is basically a bunch of lawyers. Right? Here are their qualifications, no partisan aim, and it was still ruled to be prohibited candidate intervention. So you've got to be very careful. So if you're doing any kind of know the candidate thing, you want to be super, super careful about how you do it because good intent is not a defense. Next slide, please. I keep saying that, right? What can you do? And I would say, what should you do, right? Voter registration, nonpartisan, get out the vote, education. We really need that. We saw on our tables, there's things about how to know how to vote, where to vote, deadlines. So one of the things that Vivi did earlier when she was talking about, here are some of the deadlines, here's who they are, here's how you vote, perfectly fine. An all candidate forum, you invite everybody, right? They can all come. You might have your favorites. You don't let anybody know. Don't like give somebody the better seat. You know, don't go give them a big hug. Hug every, if you're gonna hug something, this is Miami. You're gonna hug one person, hug everybody, whether you like them or not, okay? This is only something you'd say in Miami in a voter, but then right? Ballot work, right? And then we have the 501c4. You know your rules because you're a 501c4. Nobody else needs to know those. Again, giving money or in-kind help to a campaign. hey, Senator Schmo, we really believe in your mission. I've got 30 interns that would love to work for you. That's going to be a problem. Ask them for pledges, rank the candidates, or tell people how to vote. Even if it is obvious that Senator Schmo loves women and children's issues, you still can't say, vote for Senator Schmo. Next slide, please. So when it's risky is when you start to clearly name a candidate, you compare candidates, you praise the candidates, and again, you target the voters in a way that makes it look like you have a preference. And again, the timing is really important. So again, we're in June right now, but we've just, in every place that you saw yesterday had primaries this week. So the election season, especially when there's elections every 2 years, is almost always ongoing, to be perfectly honest. Next slide, please. Okay, I'm gonna keep going. Next slide. Let's say you have a candidate come to one of your events. It's easy if you have an incumbent. You invite the incumbent to just talk about what they want to talk about. Can't look like it's campaigning, can't look like it's tied to a specific bill, but maybe you're having an event and you want the people to come and they want to stand up and say a few words, right? You got to tell them, don't mention the election, don't mention your candidate, don't mention the bills you're sponsoring, don't mention any of this stuff. Now, what happens if the candidate starts this? Of course, I completely agree, Maria. Then they get up and they say, so if you really want people who are going to care about your interests, vote for me. You do not have to go and tackle them on the stage, right? You don't have to disavow them immediately. You can give them the side eye, but that's why you want to have your rules very clearly in writing in the email. Please make sure that you understand as a condition of coming here, you've got to do X, Y, and Z. So when they go off script, then you can sit there and say, that wasn't us. Next slide, please. You might have seen something, there's a thing called the Johnson Amendment named after Lyndon Johnson, which says, if you want to get taxpayer money and be tax exempt, you cannot ever endorse a candidate. That's where that red line comes from. Recently, there was something that was going to exempt churches. It was never something that was going to exempt secular charities. That litigation's on hold, but if you've heard about, well, we don't have to worry about this anymore because there's this new thing. I will tell you, though, there are some people in Washington who want to change the Johnson Amendment, which would completely change all of 501c3 law in general. But for now, this rule still stands. So if you see anything about churches, it was never going to apply to anybody that wasn't a church, and it's on hold. Next slide. Okay, who's speaking now? Staff, boards, volunteers, of course, they can speak about things politically, but it can become a little bit dangerous. We want to be careful. If somebody in your staff or your board or a volunteer has your organization's name in their profile, and then they're out making political statements, endorsing candidates or not endorsing candidates. Some courts have even said, maybe you didn't put something up about a candidate, but you retweeted or whatever, re-X'd, I don't know what it's called now, but you flipped it, right, in some way, then you're now making the statement. So you want to be careful. So if you're not using organizational resources, you're using your personal email, your personal thing, but everything, your entire carousel on Instagram is you in yellow saying Women's Fund forever, right? It's going to be harder. So even if you give a disclaimer, any money from federal restricted funds, let's say you get federal grants, you can't use that for lobbying at all, lobbying or campaign work, okay? And then in kind, this is where a lot of people get things wrong. Your list, if you say, I'm going to give you my list so you can reach more people to spread your word, candidate, this is a problem, okay? Event space. If they're not paying for it and you're not offering it to every candidate, it could be an issue. Next slide, please. Let's go back.
I'm gonna swap with you.
Perfect. Okay. So really be careful about what the email's coming from, because some of you guys are not going to remember. Maybe you get your stuff about a political campaign and you forward it, but you're forwarding it from Girl Scouts of America or YWCA. This could be a problematic issue. Your personal account, your own time, your own money, etc., less worried about it. But again, the bio. The disclaimer is helpful, but it is not like some kind of force field of protection, a golden halo. It can still be because, again, like I said, if your thing says YWCA everywhere all the time, And you're like, but this is not me from the YWCA. It's a little bit of a cognitive dissonance. And again, in this environment, we got to be careful. So now we're going to play a game. We're going to get your energy up. People in the Zoom, you're going to type in the chat. It is okay if you're wrong. By the way, if you're like, oh my God, these are so easy. This is so basic. Excellent. Then you know exactly what you're doing. And that's good. And you should feel happy. If you get everything wrong, that's what we're here for. This is a learning experience. Okay, and again, you will get all the slides, you'll get all the answers, and you'll get even more answers when I send them to Maria, and she will send them out to whomever. So what I'm going to ask you to do is, if you're in the room, you're going to yell out green, yellow, or red. Don't just say, let's do everything is yellow, because that's like the it depends. Because then you're starting to sound like lawyers, right? Green, this is good. It's a go. We can do it. Yellow, slow down, maybe. I got to think about it. And then red, stop or get legal review. You got it? Green, yellow, red. Okay? I'm going to read the scenario. You're going to yell and shout because I want to hear why not. Right? So, and for those of you in the Zoom room, you guys are going to type red, yellow, or green, or RGW, RGY. And I may ask some of you to say why or to explain the answer. All got it? Okay. All right. Clearly, I'm not good with the clicker. Next slide. Stop there. Actually, can you minimize the chat a little bit because it's blocking some of the words? Okay. First question. A digital ad asks, who is protecting our kids from toxic water? It clicks through to your research report on lead in school fountains. No candidates mentioned, no bill is mentioned. People in the Zoom type it in the chat. People in the room. Is it red? Or actually, just type this shout out with a cacophony or whatever. Either be like a beautiful orchestra or a hot mess. And by the way, just because everybody says green doesn't mean you can't say red, because you might be the only one that's right. I say this to my students all the time. You might be right. All right, what do we have in the chat? Greens and a yellow, okay. The greens are correct. Next slide. I started off easy so you guys could feel good. All right. This is an issue education, right? There's no bill. You're not talking about a candidate. This is the cleanest kind of thing. As long as it's clicking through to your actual water report, which doesn't have in the last slide, you know, now vote for Senator Schmo, right? And that'll mess it up. But everything else is fine. Next question. The same ad now says, call Senator Reyes and tell her to fund clean water now, and tags her. We got some reds, we got some yellows. What do we have in the chat? Bunch of reds, a couple of yellows. All right. Red or yellow? Is this going to be a problem? Yes. Okay, next slide. Yellow. It depends on the facts. Look at Maria's like doing an end zone dance like she's won the World Cup or something like that. Okay. Fund clean water now. If it points to a specific pending bill, this could be grassroots lobbying. So you're just going to track it. Okay? Because remember, grassroots lobbying, you're telling public, here's a specific bill, here's a call to action, you're naming somebody. It's got to have all the three, right? So it may or may not be lobbying, but it still needs review because we're in an election year and it names a specific person. Lawyers can differ. So better thing is tie it to some kind of pending vote. You know, this is going on, write your elected official about X. And again, if you're doing grassroots lobbying or any kind of lobbying, you want to track what you're doing. Next slide. What's that again?
If you're saying if you tie it to a pending vote,
But keep it about the funding, not the senator. Yeah,
okay.
because then you're probably going to be in some kind of grassroots situation. Next slide. The same ad now reads, not Senator Reyes, with a vote in November banner across the bottom. Type in the chat. Who says green? Good for you. It's okay. It's all right. You could be that one right person. Next slide. But you're not. All right. So the voting banner, the voting thing is there. It ties it directly to the election. And it's opposing a political candidate. So I'm not trying to call anybody out here. For those of you who go to No King's Day kind of things with a big banner, I'm not your lawyer. I'm just saying, I would advise against something like that if it's your banner related to your organization. Okay, because somebody could say you're opposing a candidate. Okay, other thing, but it's kings. I don't want the king of England, the king of France. That's not, but we know I'm not that good of a lawyer either. So, post reads, election day is coming. Tap here for official voting information, linking to the supervisor of elections. Was there a controversy? Okay, next slide. Great, clean, non-partisan, you have to vote. See, I'm bringing you up and down, making you feel like, but you guys feel like you know this stuff, right? Great. Next slide. Save post now as vote for candidates who support women and families. Type in the chat. Who are we saying in the chat? Are we all green, 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 yellow? Next slide, please. Now let's go back and rewind. Look at the plot twist. Vote for candidates who support women and families. This is being ultra cautious. Now comes out as red. It tells people how to vote. For a 501c3, there's a thing called thumb on the scale. Thumb on the scale means if you might be helping if somebody go closer to a candidate than not. Now, I think that this is, I would probably say this is more of a yellow. In this environment, I would say just be really careful about that, right? So again, this is being ultra cautious. In most years, I wouldn't really be that cautious about it. But just go back a second. So you might just want to keep it to like neutral voting information. Maybe it's vote for the candidates who have the values that you have, or whatever it is, something that's, and then have a bunch of pictures of women and families, whatever it is. Yeah, that's subliminal messaging, whatever it is, right? So it could be, but it could be dangerous. Yes. My time is going to be up in a second.
Oh my God, sorry, I'm going.
That's my fault.
Can you connect that to like Amendment 4 as an example? So YWCA, right, supports Amendment 4 because our mission is to empower women.
Right.
So we are clearly aligned with Amendment 4.
Right. So I'm not your lawyer. Right? And again, you're talking about something that support amendment. When I'm talking about Amendment 4 is for the people that may not know, you have to go back.
It's the heels. Amendment 4 was the bill in the 2024 national election or Florida election about pro-choice, pro-life abortion. It was the abortion ban.
Right. So, not speaking as your lawyer, speaking as a human being, I don't necessarily. I think that could be risky, but I understand why you would do it, and I don't think that It's not along the lines of and this is being recorded, so I really wouldn't. I might say something a little bit different, but I think that is a risk, but I think if you speak to your counsel and your board and you understand what those risks are, it is likely a risk that would make sense given what the YWCA does. What I think though is sometimes safer is if people kind of don't tie it to, you can tie it to, and again, keep track, you're tying it to the specific bill and you're telling, what you're doing is grassroots lobbying, right? Just make sure you're tracking it. Remember, direct lobbying, senator, vote for this. Grassroots lobbying, support Amendment 4. Here's the bill. Go talk to your congressman about Amendment 4. Less of a concern about that. You just have to track what you're doing. The reason that I talked about this thing called 501H is it makes it much clearer because it's based on a money issue and how much you're spending and what your budget is, etc. 501c3, without the Amendment H election, makes it much more difficult because you have to do whole facts and circumstances test, and it makes it a little bit more complex. So some people will say you actually could do more lobbying with 501H election than if you're a 501c3 without it. That was a whole lot of letters and numbers. Talk to your lawyers. I would not be so worried about that because I think of that more as grassroots lobbying, just as long as you are, hypothetically not giving you advice, as long as it's being tracked. Yes.
Question. Ooh, sorry, question. And first, Marcia, we did build in some time.
Okay.
So the people online might want a little potty break, but we can eat some of that time up. Really important question here. So I would have voted green on that one because as part of the Women's Funding Network, one of the things we keep on talking about is not losing our voice. That it's
Absolutely.
very important to not go quiet, not lay over and low, just because you think that maybe something might go wrong, you're losing your voice. So for example, issue-oriented expression and advocacy has been encouraged. So let me bring it down to a really specific question. Like locally, many nonprofits are looking at the awareness of freedom to read, right? That there's been erasure of women's issues, LGBTQ plus issues, African American heritage, and the list that is very non-exhaustive, right? So many of us are talking about ask the candidates if they believe in the freedom to read. What do they think about book bans and book reading, et cetera? Where does that fall in the?
I have a slide possibly for that. Next slide. It's not the next slide, but, okay. Yes.
I understand the nature of the wording in all of this, be it red, green, or yellow. How crazy does this get? Meaning the pictures that you put with people in an event for your organization. Is it going to that?
I wouldn't be worried about that.
Okay.
I'll just give you an example though. James Comey, former DOJ person, had some seashells on a beach and it was indicted twice, or attempted to be indicted twice by an administration. I'm just gonna leave it at that. That's a factual statement. It's not a political statement. So when I get super, like this for me, probably be a yellow, to be honest, or maybe a green in some circumstances. I just want everybody to be very, very careful, because to the extent that there are many people that are nonprofits that may have issues with whatever state or federal government is doing, it is a difficult time. My friend may be losing her congressional seat in Alabama as of a couple of days ago, right? So we are not in ordinary times. So when you say like, our lawyer said it was fine, it may be, but I think we're in times where what the law says and what the law allows, because I always tell people, you could fight something and you could win and spend $500,000 to do it, right? It's a matter of, should there be certain risks that may not be worth taking? Now, fund Amendment 4, fight for XYZ, it's grassroots lobbying. It's not illegal. Just make sure you're tracking it. Next slide. Next one. Skip this one. It's right, by the way. Premiums keep rising. Senator Reyes voted to keep them high. Call her and tell her to pass the new subsidy bill. Now you all are scared. Type in the chat. Next slide. Next slide. Next slide. Oops, wait, actually, go back. Go back. Nope. Go back. This can be seen, and there was actually an example of this that I saw, of it possibly attacking a political candidate. Doesn't seem like it makes any sense, but there was a situation where this similar wording was used, and the political candidate said, this is an attack on me, even though it is a factual statement. So it could be, here are what a safer to be doing, you can take to the next slide. Here's a list of the political candidates. Here's where they stand on these issues. I would do a direct link to whatever their website says or whatever public statements they've said and let people decide for themselves. The best rule of thumb, so that you're thinking about what you're doing, the safest thing is go directly back to their words and their source and have people make the decisions for themselves. That's also the best rule of thumb. If people from any party could make their own independent decision based on what you posted and it's not skewed, you're going to be better off. Next slide. Because that one, by the way, was also 2 weeks before the election. Right.
If they just took that one sentence, it would have been okay.
Which one says?
If they just took out that one sentence, what she voted for, in the past, what she voted.
And I think you can say, I think you can, the key is, especially in this climate, let's talk what everybody voted for.
Mm-hmm.
here's an issue with such and such. This is what this issue means. Here's how the candidates voted. Contact your elected representative to discuss what matters to you or something like that. It's not as punchy, but again, the key is I just want everybody to be safe right now. Safer. You send every candidate in the race the same publicly available brief on your issue. So doing a scorecard that links to candidates' vote history would be okay. That is what people do often, right? Link it directly to their site. You don't editorialize it. You don't sit there saying, so you know who you got to vote for, right? Don't do anything like that, right? But if everybody can see it, and that really is the public service that you're doing. Chances are, if you're publishing something, the people who are going to see it are the people who are already aligned with what you care about anyway. They're going to know what you think, right? So, but safest, again, I'm asking you to be more safe than I would normally say just because of the environment. Next, so this one, every candidate gets the same publicly available brief. Next slide. This is green. You're nudging positions, you're not aiding a campaign. Next one, I'm gonna go a little more quickly. You want every candidate to sign a pledge that they support your issue if elected. Some are like, that is a great idea. Okay, let's shout it out. Red, yellow, green. We have some yellow, some reds in the chat. I think you're not the top. I think you're, okay. All right, now we got down to this one. Now everybody's scared, so it's saying red. It's red. Because asking candidates to pledge support will function like an endorsement, and it's considered a prohibited political intervention. Okay, so again, next slide. Don't forget what nonprofits do. Nonprofits have always been the people that step in when government cannot or will not do something for people that they should be doing, right? And so when nonprofits are coming out and speaking out against government or against candidates, it makes people a little salty, right? And again, given our current political climate, it's a little saltier than usual. You invite a sitting senator. Actually, let's go to the next one. I think I already talked about this one. I want to keep going because okay, stop there. You invite, no, go back. Because I want to make sure I get to Mario's question. It's in here someplace. You invite all 5 candidates in a county race to a forum to accept. You hold it with just the 2 who accepted, and you use a neutral person. You've got a combination of greens and yellows. Next slide. Yellow, it's fixable. Make sure the questions are neutral. And by the way, if it's 2 people that you really like, you're like, thank God, these are the 2 that came, you know, be careful, right? But sometimes, if there's like 20 candidates and only 2 show up, it could look like it's curated. So you want to have all of your rules really carefully put out there. In addition, let's say you only want to invite 2 candidates. Make it very clear. We're inviting people who in the polling numbers have 30% or more or whatever it is. Make that very clear for the invite so that nobody can go back and say you only invited the people that you care about. And you invite everybody in the community, not just your supporters. You invite everybody. Next slide. Next slide. Next slide. I feel like you should know this one. You publish Know Your Rights at the poll and who to call if you have a problem, written so anyone, if any of you can use it. This is the safest possible thing. This is a green. Next slide. Next slide. You guys are going to get all these double answers. Next slide. I'm going to deal with this one because this might come up. Your executive director or CEO writes an op-ed in the newspaper. People still do read newspapers occasionally, right? Urging a yes vote on a ballot measure. The byline identifies her as your director with the line that the views are her own. Type in the chat, Zoom people. We got reds and yellows here. The Zoom room is not as forgiving. They're like, it's red. We've got 1 yellow, okay? Okay, next slide. Okay, talking about a ballot measure, forget the 501H part, right? The title with the disclaimer is generally okay, but we have to be really careful. Keep the organization resources out of it. Confirm your state and local lobbying rules. I think think you want to look through. Never mind. Confirm your state and local lobbying rules, because state and local lobbying rules might be different depending on what you're doing. But basically, you're reaching the general public. Not so worried about this one. Next slide. We're going to skip this one. All right, Mario, let me make sure I have your question. I think I went past it. Give me your question again, please.
So based on what the Women's Funding Network is telling us, they want to make sure that we don't lay over and are silent, that we should be speaking up and advocating for issues that we care about in a nonpartisan fashion. So utilizing the local example of many different organizations looking at advocating for people to speak up about the freedom to read and would be against book banning and against book weeding.
Remember, you're doing issue-based advocacy there, and depending on how it's framed, it is grassroots lobbying. Lobbying is not illegal. Grassroots lobbying is not illegal. You just want to track it. If you're mentioning a specific bill, specific piece of legislation, or you're mentioning specific people, you're doing a call to action, you just have to keep track of what you're doing. It is not, at a time, it's not as dangerous because the rules are almost never enforced, but in a way, it's almost a little more dangerous because there may be selective enforcement depending on the issue that you're talking about. So I just encourage all of you to, if you have access to legal counsel, just pass them by and say, is this okay? And document everything. And remember that the key is, let's go to the next slide. Stay here, go back. A call to action on specific legislation is lobbying, but you are allowed to do it. That's what I want to make sure that you don't think. So the support Amendment 4 or against Amendment 4 or support medical marijuana, whatever it is, as long as you're keeping track of how you're doing it, that's fine. Next slide. So what I want you to think about again is, do you know, and do you guys have training? Do you have a social media policy, by the way, for your volunteers, your interns, your board members, et cetera, as it relates to political statements? You may want to think about doing something like that. Who is speaking in what capacity? Is it the volunteer speaking in their own capacity, saying something on Instagram or TikTok? Or is it the executive director doing an op-ed in the Miami Herald saying this is what the Women's Fund or this is what the YWCA believes? Doesn't mean it's illegal. You just have to make sure that you're being very careful. What you can never do is support or endorse or oppose a specific political candidate by name. Next slide. So when you think about how does the IRS measure your lobbying and what approach fits you, this is where you might want to look at talk to your counsel about 501H because it makes it easier. Is your record clean? Do you know your process if you're ever pressured by the government? Do you have a process? Are there any federal or restricted funds anywhere near your advocacy spending? Because there are specific rules as it relates to that as well. And again, do you have a written election season policy? Do you train on it? Next slide. So the last thing I'm going to say is I am actually happy to answer additional questions during the break or separately. I'm building something for nonprofits and for for-profits to help them understand their rules, the compliance, et cetera, all without practicing law, all without engaging in the unauthorized practice of law. So we'll have checklists, templates, news, et cetera. I'm looking for nonprofits to be beta testers. If you are a beta tester, you'll get free access. Well, obviously, Women's Fund is already in. Right? You're going to get free access for the lifetime of the product. It'll have checklists. It'll have, because I do advise a lot of nonprofits. I'm helping some set them up. And there's a lot that people don't know, and you can't necessarily afford a lawyer. This is not a replacement for a lawyer, but this is so that you have the information. So when you go to the lawyer, you can ask better questions. So if you'd like to be a beta tester, please feel free to fill that out. And I'm happy to answer other questions during the break. And if there's any in the chat, I can answer some. Arthi has a question.
What if you're having, like, say you put on an event and there's a discussion and maybe there is people in the audience asking questions or making comments against certain candidates? What happens there?
We appreciate that everybody has different points of view. You know, as the such and such fund of such and such, you know, we want to make sure that we're complying with the rules of the law and we don't endorse or oppose any particular candidate. Here's how we feel about the issue. Here's what we urge you to do. Here's who your congressperson is, or your state legislator or representative or your council person. and you may want to reach out to them. Here's an issues guide, something like that. But you don't, again, you tackle them? No. But it's a member of the audience, right? So
Yeah.
you can't control people in the audience choose to do. But your job is not to get into that kind of a debate and really focus on, here are the issues, here's why it matters to women and girls, here's why it matters to sports fans, here's why it matters to survivors of domestic violence, et cetera, and kind of take it back to the issue.
Do you, if say it's a panel member or an audience member, do you step in that moment and just say, hey, reminder that we're,
Yeah, and I would, if you're having a panel too, I'd remind them of, you're speaking for your own organization, of course, but here's some of the things. We are not inviting people to talk about endorsing candidates, et cetera. We're inviting people to educate the public about issues that they may not know about, right? Now, if you're a for-profit company, this is much easier. I used to run a PAC and run the lobbying and run up to Washington and meet people and not give them bags of money because that would be bribery. But it was a very different kind of a thing, right? You didn't have all of these rules, right? You could simply say, in your district, 42,000 people are going to be affected. You can still do that, by the way. And that's important because if you say, I just want you to be aware of this issue, Senator Schmo, and it says you're direct lobbying and it's okay, it's not illegal. Here's what happens we figured out that, 72,000 working mothers are going to be without resources if this bill passes. This is why this is really important. That's what nonprofits are supposed to do. The whole point of lobbying is because you have information that the political person does not have or doesn't have the depth of the information. So it is not a problem to do that. Does that help? Yeah, but I would just always have your ground rules there.
So you just answered, but I'm going to ask you to take this further. So this is a wake up, all of you who are online and everybody who's here. There is a lot of collective concern about Florida property tax rules and how it will change what that means for infrastructure of our civil society and civic support. So could you give us some really concrete feedback of how to find your voice as a nonprofit and as an individual when we're looking at something like this that's going to be coming on the ballot?
That sounds like a very difficult question to answer. And I'm going to answer in a second after I'm going to answer something in the chat because I don't want to forget, right? It is a federal crime to threaten to strip a nonprofit of its status because of viewpoint, right? To threaten to do it unless there's an actual reason to do so, unless they're actually doing it. So there's a question about, can you strip if you accidentally lobby, right? That is not likely to happen, right? And the question again is, nonprofits are allowed to lobby, right? What you're not allowed to do is support or oppose a political candidate directly or indirectly. So remember, our direct lobbying, Senator, vote for this. Indirect lobbying, public, here's the issue, here's who you should talk to, here's what the call to action is. All of that is legal. It's a question about how you keep track of it, and are you straying into the line of looking like you are making your viewpoint? Because the whole thing, like I said, that Johnson Amendment, that's where this all comes from. This from Lyndon Johnson, by the way, that you do not have the ability to support or oppose a candidate. Where the line gets gray is because your candidates and your issues are intertwined, right? That's where it gets gray. So you're not going to be stripped for that. Lisette, thank you for putting that public education scorecard in there. I haven't seen it, but I'm glad that you put it in, and I hope other people in the Zoom put chat things that are helpful. So I don't know, Lisette, if there's something else you didn't need to send, but I'm glad that you put that in there because we can see that. And then James just has a Y. So I don't know if that's just a delayed yellow or something, but so now, how do people find their voice? Such a philosophical question. I think everybody in this room is here because you're passionate about something and you're passionate about helping people. I became a member of the board of the Women's Fund because I'm a survivor of domestic violence, and it's really important for me to be part of something I believed in. So when you think about finding your voice, I think it is, notwithstanding this entire presentation I gave, it is irresponsible for people not to speak up. See Moses back there is a former student. Part of the reason I left academia is that I did not feel comfortable, even though my university said nothing about it, speaking out politically, because I didn't want my university to have an issue with its status as I've seen happen to Harvard and Columbia, right? So I say that if you have something to say, you have to use your voice because people are getting their information in an echo chamber, right? And the reason it's important to step outside of the people that you normally talk to is the people you normally talk to already agree with you, right? So they are like, yes, we agree. So I'm not saying you're wasting your time, but the better use of your time is think about how can we get our message for people who may not agree with us or who may not understand the issues in a way that looks objective, nonpartisan, and a way that can influence and convince them to at least become more educated on the topic, right? Because staying silent or speaking only to our people is not what the world needs right now. You have to focus on, there's a reason some of you are here and you could be making twice as much in the private sector, at least, right? So you choose to make less money, you choose to work probably longer hours on things that are politically difficult and unpopular to some people that you know because you believe in it. And that's the voice that you have to say and you have to use. And when you're telling stories, yes, the statistics matter, facts tell and the stories sell, right? So everybody here knows somebody. There's very few people that say we want women and children in the streets, right? But things have become so politicized because of budget things. So tell those stories that get people to want to support the cause and people will fall where they may. I don't know if that helps or not. Okay.
I really appreciate that. I think it's really important from working in the government now, but also when I was in a nonprofit before. But I do find that those bumper rails you're showing us are changing.
Yeah.
And from one day to the next. And so it is critical that you keep your voice, but I am noticing, right, that sometimes it's hard to separate your individual self from who you work for, just like you said. But in some of these instances, the university wasn't getting in trouble, but the professor was, or academic person was getting fired because they posted a meme or they said yes to something online. So that is, I think that's going to be a constant struggle. And as an attorney, I wanted to get your viewpoints on that, but it does seem like it shifts. And sometimes and the law didn't shift, but kind of the way
the enforcement shifts or the priority shift. And that's for every administration, right? And so that is why I tell you to really, with a fine-tooth comb, go through your messaging. If you do nothing else, think about your social media policy and strategy. Think about what you've told your board members, your interns, your ambassadors, your advisory board members, your supporters about what they should and shouldn't do, and give them some guidance because the issue is, whether you're dealing with state, federal, or local government, everybody's on edge, right? And the thing that can derail an organization with, very few of you, unless I'm wrong, have extra money to spend on legal fees to win a case that could take 2 years, right? Meanwhile, completely debilitating your ability to operate is to be more careful. That's why the one that was red, you're like, I don't know, I think that's a green or yellow. Like right now, I'm just saying, just be really careful. Talk to your own lawyers because, again, you also have the benefit of lawyers who will sit there and say, I know the entire circumstance. I don't think this is going to happen. But what you just said is true. Nothing is predictable right now. And I think that is what the problem is. It is very hard to say this won't be a problem. If I did this a few years ago, I'd say this has never happened. It's not going to be an issue. But we see what's happening to some of the most powerful nonprofits in the world. And the ones with the most money. Harvard has a $59 billion endowment. And they spent millions and millions and millions and millions and millions to keep their status, right? And to keep their accreditation. Unless and if you guys have millions and millions and millions and for legal fees, then I want to know which nonprofit you're working for because I'm available. No, I'm just kidding. I'm going way over my time. I'm sorry, Mario. Go ahead.
My question is in reference to giving guidance to nonprofits. And it's in relation to the fact that I am an author of children's picture books with diverse characters. I know the schools have an issue, so I don't directly do book readings to children in schools except for the after school program, because that's not school, those are different organizations. Nonprofits, should I give guidance or direction for some of the nonprofits where I do book readings? to, consider whether this is appropriate per their.
I'm not gonna answer that question. That question is gonna be, they should talk to their legal counsel and get the best guidance given their
Well,
situation.
that's what I wanted to know. Should they?
And if they have it, and there's also, organizations, there's lots of nonprofit coalitions and organizations with lawyers who are willing to help and give advice. I mean, I would recommend that, coordinate with those organizations that are dealing with free speech and other kinds of issues, right? First Amendment does not apply in a private workplace. It only is there to protect you from the government, right? And so to the extent that, and that's actually, by the way, where some of the churches were coming out, we got to be able to say, we went from the pulpit and talk to our flock and our parishioners, right? And it's there, but again, it's a little bit more dangerous. That's not a helpful answer for you at all, but it's a yellow.
Marcia,
Don't
first
get me in
of all,
trouble with Mario.
thank you for this. I think this is my second or third training. I'm learning more each time. My question is this, to delineate from my personal to being a board member of the Women's Fund. My personal, I don't attach myself to the Women's Fund, but I do have a voice there, and I'm pretty strong with it at times. But I also post a lot for the Women's Fund as a proud board member, sharing how much exposure
So
do I
use
have?
some of your characters that you have on Instagram or TikTok or whatever to say, the views here stated are wholly my own, etc. Unless I'm talking specifically about the Women's Fund. Again, that's like all your characters, right? But there's the disclaimers. That's what some people typically advise. All views here are my own. If you ever go, by the way, to any presentation where the government is talking to lawyers, they'll sit there from the SEC. We are not speaking here on behalf of the SEC. These don't represent the views of the SEC, but of course everybody knows they represent those views. That's where you have to be careful, right? And the higher up you are in an organization, are you the board member or are you the vice chair of the board? Are you the CEO or are you, the intern? You just have to be, and there's some people that have their personal account and they have their account where they, and I don't recommend this because this is unwieldy, but if you have lots of time, they have another account where they, this is my one where I post about Women's Fund stuff. And then the other one, I don't even have Women's Fund or YWCA on my profile. This is my personal account. And this is where I'm going to post about whatever I feel like it, right?
Do you have to put that disclaimer every time?
No. I'm saying that I have, you have your profile and it has sorry, Zoom people, I'm not even looking at you. You have your profile and you could say, John Bitterman, retired, super amazing person, right? Take away some of those characters and say, all political views are my own and not attributed to any organization or something like that. That is being overly lawyerly, but that is what I would advise. Feel free to use what you like and throw away the rest. Okay. I think we're done. I got the axe. I'm ready to wrap up. I was ready to wrap up like 15 minutes ago. Okay. Thank you guys, and please post any questions anytime.
We built on that in that break on purpose because I knew we would have to keep on talking the whole time because people were going to leave. They were going to think that nothing's happening. So we know that you folks online have already been going to the powder room when you wanted and getting your coffee when you wanted. A personal invitation for those of you who are here. The powder rooms are here through the double doors, like I mentioned before. To the left, there's more coffee and some goodies back there. Please be human as we continue on reiterating what we always know. We want you to use your Women's Fund. You own this place. That means all of the resources that are online, the Gender Inequity Index, the Gender Inequity Dashboard, some of the one-pagers. There might be information that one of the folks here who represents somebody in government might say, didn't the Women's Fund do something making women and girls visible vis-a-vis gun violence? I want to look that up. Or I'm really interested in the data of available OBGYNs. I heard there's something changing these days in Miami-Dade. There's data there, and then there are people to help you make it living and breathing. So Viviana and many other folks are able to bring you whatever you want presented, but also take that information from our website, and that includes this advocacy training. So everything that Marcia just shared with you, I see them every time, several times, because what Adele's gonna share with you now, I'm gonna say, I think I got it. That day I thought I got it, but now I'm something niggling, I'm not sure. I wanna hear what Adele told me again. So when you see those impact collaboratives, know that you are welcome to show your church group or your PTA or your class that you are participating in at FIU. Say, I'd like to share this with my colleagues. So please know that we're here at your service, and anything more, let us know. So now we are to where we were going to be in the schedule. I'm going to ask the amazing Adele Valencia, who was on the board when I joined the board some moons ago, of the Women's Fund Miami-Dade. I'm going to let her introduce herself. She's going to talk to us about really specific things. She's going to tell you more, but I want to say that when Adele and I started volunteering together and then working together, it was the beginning of when we decided to have the Legislative and Advocacy Committee was born. And this is your Women's Fund Miami-Dade, so we care about things globally, nationally, statewide very much, but where we really have our most influence and potential is here locally. And so we have a real expert here, Attorney Adele Valencia and Supermom, here to tell you, we need to know what you can do.
Thank you so much for that warm introduction, and thank you all for being here. I see a room full of accomplished advocates and civic superstars. I'm grateful to be able to speak with you, and I know we have some students online, so thanks to you as well. We're so lucky to count on the wisdom and brilliance of Professor Marcia Noreen Weldon, Esquire. I hope that you all absorbed as much from that as I did. It's really useful. And I'd like to build on some of that by talking about sort of a local government perspective. But first, just a little bit about who I am and what my experience has been. I'm an attorney. I'm a mother of 3. I just became a mom for a 3rd time at age 43. So your girl is tired and sleep deprived and still on maternity leave, but that's how committed I am to Women's Fund, that I am out here with you all. I grew up in Miami since I was 4. I love Miami. And the reason that I care so much about advocacy is because some of the most rewarding professional and personal relationships of my life have come from getting involved in community outreach in Miami, right? I love this town. I feel like I'm living on my 3rd or 4th version of it because I moved here in 1987 and we're reinventing ourselves all the time. But I started my career in local government with my longtime mentor and friend, Daniela Levine Cava, 12 years ago, when she was a first-term county commissioner. I met her because I was her intern when I was 19 years old. In 2002, I worked at it was then called Human Services Coalition, now many of us know it as Catalyst Miami. But in addition to serving in county government, I also led a City of Miami department during some pretty controversial years. I still have the battle scars and hours of depositions to prove that I did. And for the last 5 years, I've been a partner at an organization called LSN Law, which stands for Local, State, National. So we have both a law firm and an advocacy shop. Our advocacy shop, Government Affairs Lobbying Firm, right, has offices in Miami-Dade, Broward, Palm Beach, Tallahassee, DC. So I'm really lucky to count on a talented group of colleagues who have mastery sort of at all levels of government. And our law firm focuses locally, but what all of our clients have in common, oh, sorry about that. Sure. What all of our clients have in common is that they're either trying to get something from, change something about, or do business with government. And that's really where I spend my professional time today. I represent a lot of nonprofits in my current practice, and I'm delighted to do so. And like my colleague, I'm not issuing any legal advice today. I'm giving you sort of an overview. So we're going to talk about 3 things, and I want to leave ample time for your questions. The first thing is, why does advocacy matter? And why should you care about local government? The second thing I want to describe to you is the structure, right, of what we're advocating in, the context in which we're working. And to be an effective advocate, you really have to do your research and understand where you're standing. And the third and final thing is how to build relationships that are durable, right, with integrity. Because if you don't have those, you can't be effective. And to build on what Marcia said, right, the quietest nonprofit is not always the most effective.
The loudest advocate is not always the most effective. Frequently, they are not. So we'll get to that, but let's start with why it matters. Our local government impacts the air we breathe, the water that we drink, the public transit that we ride or don't ride, the potholes, the quality of our streets, right? The airport, whether it functions, the seaport, the density, the urban design, all of that is made at a local level. Our county government has a $12.9 billion budget. And we're really in a complicated system, which I'll get to in a second. But that is why I would submit to you that it's really worthwhile your time to get to know who represents you. By a show of hands, who knows who their county commissioner is? So this is a really impressive and unrepresentative sample of people because the majority of folks are raising their hands. But you know what? You had to learn that on your own and the hard way, because it's not like they teach us in public high school, what is the structure of civics in Miami-Dade County? Why do we have a two-tier form of government? They should. But these are all things you as affirmative learners have had to seek out to better understand. And that's a testament to you. But we need to bring that gospel to empower all of the millions of residents in Miami-Dade County, right? So that we're on equal footing. You're much more likely to have an interaction with a county judge or a county commissioner or a city police officer than you are ever to meet your senator. That's just the truth of our lives, right? And the things that most make or break your quality of life, right? Can I roll my baby stroller on a sidewalk that doesn't have a crater in it? Can I take my elderly mother in her wheelchair somewhere? Does my park get its grass cut? Those are all things that our local folks are deciding on. The structure. The first thing about Florida is we're special in a lot of ways. I went to law school in Northern California, and in many ways, California is like the foil of Florida legally. So we have a law for everything in California. Florida is just negative space in a lot of ways. It's really an interesting contrast. But one of the things that we have very robust laws about is government in the sunshine. So the first thing that you need to understand when you're stepping into the forum, and congrats to you, to engage with local elected officials or state elected officials, or even administrative staff, is that everything you say, everything you write, everything you talk about in that meeting that gets transcribed, everything you text message, that is all subject to Florida's very broad public record laws. So rule number one is do no harm, right? Don't write anything to an elected official or an administrative staff person that you would not want published in the front page of the Miami Herald out of context in the light least favorable to you, right? And don't put them in that situation. So please recall that. The second important thing is that for the non-lawyers in the room, right, we need to think about what is our relationship to Tallahassee, our state government. Well, it's complicated. Florida's home rule, right, started in Miami-Dade County in 1956. If you know your history, you know the city of Miami was incorporated in 1896. So we're a complicated two-tier form of government where some of our municipalities, and there are 34 just in our county, predate our county home rule. We used to be ruled from on high in Tallahassee, and it feels sometimes like that's happening a lot because of the dynamic of preemption. So what that basically means is that local governments operate within the parameters that our state government allows us to. Preemption means you can't legislate about this. We are preempted from doing that. And it feels as though each session gets a little bit more reactive, right? You know, my colleague said that we're in kind of interesting, spicy, uncomfortable, scary times. It feels a little bit like that. And my own personal belief is the antidote to those times is meetings like this, right? Social trust, community connection. It's hard to hang up close. And if you start to get to know your state senator and your state representative, and if you make the case to them and you're writing to them frequently and you're coming to their town halls, then it's harder for them to go up to Tallahassee and take away rights from our local government. But if no one's making that case, then things happen that we don't agree with. And then we're forever banned from doing things like banning plastic bags, for example, which some municipalities tried. So the state preemption piece is an important piece of it. And I won't get in depth in the state legislative structure, but if you all are paying attention right now, we have a pretty quick legislative session. It happens real fast. How many of y'all have been up to days in Tallahassee? Okay. So the dynamic in Tallahassee is it feels sometimes like when you get there, everything's baked, right? Doesn't it? Like I came to this party late and everything has been decided. And one thing I want to share with you about the Tallahassee process is that folks are very well organized. They really pride themselves on a sense of adherence to rules. And we know years in advance who's going to rise into those positions of power. And it's really important that we do our research and meet with those folks in advance because they're going to come into their 2 years of tenure as the Speaker of the House or the Senate President with a whole laundry list of agenda items that they've been talking about publicly for years. So doing your homework and understanding what do those folks care about? What are they here to do? What are they trying to accomplish in a short period of time will advance your cause deeply. Okay, so we know that Tallahassee can preempt us and they set the parameters for our local government. What about local government? Two-tier form of government. We have a strong mayor in Miami-Dade County's Mayor Daniela Levine Cava, our first woman mayor of Miami-Dade County. We have 13 single-member county commissioners. Up until the 1990s, this community could not elect a person of color countywide. And we changed the rules from at-large seats, right, where county commissioners had the purview for the entire county, to single-member districts. What do you lose and what do you gain when you make those changes? Well, one perspective is that one of the challenges of the current structure of the county commission with all of the many benefits that it brings, including accountability to your local, right, folks who have elected you, is that you kind of can lose that big countywide comprehensive perspective because you have 13 people who are accountable to specific districts, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. My colleague Helena, who's here, could speak about this better than almost anyone. She's been a wonderful and capable county employee for many, many years in District 9. But that's important to keep in mind. The strong mayor system means that our county mayor is in charge of administering that incredibly large ship that is our county services, right? And that incorporates a ton of things like we've already talked about: airport, seaport, metro rail, traffic lights, many zoning decisions. Okay, now come down from there and then go to the 34 cities. 34 mayors plus the county mayor. People can't keep it straight. Many people don't know which city they live in. And since we're never really taught how to read a tax bill or what a millage rate is, it can be really disempowering. So in terms of structure, the first thing I want you to think about before you ask for a meeting or advocate for a cause is, who do I need to talk to? And it's not always intuitive, right? I meet many people who have issues with school board, right? Or I'm a public school parent. My kids go to school where I went to school. But you sometimes have to talk to your school board member or the superintendent, and that school board system has a completely different structure and election schedule and jurisdiction than our county commission. So just getting to a place where you know who's my city official, who's my county official, who's my school board member, who's my state rep, that's like a homework assignment, right? So we all need to be doing that homework to know where we are, and there's tools online, but that's the first thing. The second thing about structure is understanding what decisions can this person make, right? If I'm a county commissioner, what's my power? I can make legislation, right, that directs the county mayor to do a thing, and I've got to count to 7 colleagues, right? We have to have 7 people vote for it in order for it to pass. If the mayor vetoes it, I need 9. So thinking about those things is really important. There's also different types of legislation that have different impacts. One of the things that gets a lot of attention are resolutions, right? And sometimes they're just urging another body to do a thing. They don't have any like sticking power. They can be really important, right? They can be setting a precedent, kind of conveying a message, but it's very important to understand those kinds of nuances. The next thing I'll say is the city of Miami, in contrast to Miami-Dade County, just to give you one flavor of how this complexity varies. The city of Miami has a $1.2 billion budget, right? Almost 500,000 residents. We're sitting in the city of Miami right now. The city of Miami just elected their first woman mayor, and Eileen Higgins. Took us 129 years to do it, but God bless, we are here. And we only have 5 city commissioners in the city of Miami. 5. That makes the dynamic at the city of Miami really different than Miami-Dade County, where you've got 13 people, right, in a much larger geographic area. There have been efforts afoot, and I encourage you to look those up to kind of understand what number of city commissioners really makes sense for the city that the city of Miami is today. Before today, there are 5. What's the power of the mayor? We don't have a strong mayor system in the city of Miami. It is a mayor-manager form of government. So her greatest power is picking the city manager. And the city manager is the person who administers all of the workforce and all of the departments. And what's the dynamic between the manager and the commission? The manager has to faithfully execute the mandates of that city commission, right? So these kinds of nuances are important. The final thing I'll say around the structure piece is there's staff members that are really important. We have some in the audience today, but not all staff members are created equal. They don't even have the same titles, right? Some folks really trust a chief of staff and they say, I'm going to empower this person to be my proxy and to speak for me. And some folks never choose a chief of staff. They come up with another kind of title, or they just don't put a lot of faith in any of their staff members at all. And it varies from person to person. It's as idiosyncratic as sort of like, you know, a family dynamic would be. So it's really important to understand who the staff are. It's important to get to know them and their background. Once we had term limits take effect, we voted to create them in 2012 in Miami-Dade County. There's a lot of staff members that have more institutional knowledge than even some of our county commissioners. And the dynamic has changed radically since I joined county government 12 years ago, right? Why? Because the folks that are elected today to our county commission, for the most part, have done other things. The average age has fallen precipitously, and many of them come from Tallahassee, from the city of Miami, from the school board. They've had different experiences, and they bring all of those experiences to bear in how they legislate in Miami-Dade County. So that's kind of just a perspective on structure. I'm going to stop here for a second because I've said a lot. And I want to hear if any of y'all have any questions either about why advocacy is important or the structure. It's okay if not. Okay. So those are the kinds of primers on structure that I would give, right? But I would just say the third piece is probably the most important piece about being an effective advocate. So once you understand your why, and once you have done your research, what's the best way to get your message across, right? And the first thing I would say is your integrity is all you have. So going back to that point of don't put anything in writing you don't want splashed across the internet forever. Treating people with respect is never a bad choice. You might have a perspective on someone that they're the most hateful, ugly human being, and you have to kind of summon from within you, this person's mom loves them, they might be a great singer, they might have rescued a cat, they might have done one thing that is redeeming and kind in that dark heart of theirs. And you go for that thing. You go for that authentic connection to that person. You have to walk in because folks are going to feel it if you come in with contempt. They're going to feel your disdain and they're going to shut down. In fact, they might not even give you a meeting, right? So once you kind of can summon that really good thing about them and you've learned a little bit about their story, where did they come from? What do they care about? I would say as a general guide to understanding politicians, right? They care about voters, who elected them, who's going to reelect them. They care about media attention. In this fractured media market in which we live, one ugly story can really sink a person, right? Everyone talks about the attention economy and how we're all fighting for attention. It's super important to be aware that their perspective is going to be, okay, can this issue maybe spill out in an ugly way or cause some kind of ugly media stain? Is there some risk to me here? The third thing they care about are resources. Why? Because in a post-Citizens United world, the pace of fundraising is more rapacious than ever. It's really a year-round game. And I'll take a side step here to note that in Miami-Dade County, the biggest contributors to campaigns for county commissioners and mayors are folks that do business with government. And that is completely legal and not a conflict under our Commission on Ethics. There are caveats and exemptions. Some cities have taken a bolder stance and said, no, vendors can't give to campaigns. But in Miami-Dade County, right, and it's worth reading the code on the conflict of ethics, that's perfectly legal. And so those folks can tend to have an outsized impact, right? Because they're the people that are most frequently in the room, they're contributing most reliably, right? And so if you're thinking as a nonprofit, right, I'm thinking about, I can maybe work with gathering voters that this person hasn't met, or maybe I have some kind of media outreach. Money is usually not the strength of a nonprofit. You're not usually allowed to contribute to campaigns, right? And then the fourth thing is legacy, because everyone wants to be known for having done something well, something they can be proud of. Miami-Dade County is a place where the built environment has changed more in my lifetime than I would argue many cities in America, right? If you look around, this place is almost unrecognizable. And we're at a point now where we're not making any new land. We're lucky to be sandwiched between two national parks, Everglades and Biscayne, right? But we're having to really rethink how we plan out a community when folks keep moving here and people keep having babies and people keep getting divorced and our traffic gets worse every year. And in the same time, right, the federal funding for public transit projects is unrecognizable. That landscape has shifted since we built the Metro Rail in the 80s, right? And everything is just going up and up and up and up in cost. So going back to the relationship piece, first thing is, right, voters, media, resources, and legacy. So I would always inform whatever I'm going to say with that framework and context in mind. And then knowing that I've done my research about what is the power of this elected official, what's their mandate, what do they care about, and what are they legally authorized to legislate about, then I would say going in and making sure that you align your requests with their vision. You know, Commissioner so-and-so, you've been a faithful advocate for the arts, or you always show up for children, right? You come every year to the Leisure City K-8 performance, and we really appreciate that about you. Start with something, right, that is relevant to their district and their constituents. Start with something that they have done in that area that you care about, and then explain to them why sometimes a seemingly obscure decision about a rule or the change of a department rule is going to impact that broader thing. For women and girls, and this, I'll close with this, when I worked for now Mayor Levine Cava, one of the first pieces of legislation was the CEDAW, the Convention on the Elimination of Discrimination Against Women. This is an international human rights treaty the U.S. never signed on to that the county commission passed, right? And basically what it does is apply a gender lens to how we expend government resources, and it requires the county to track the progress of women and girls in critical areas like health and safety, economic well-being, and I think I'm missing a third one that Dr. Ilcheva could fill me in. Education, there we go, educational attainment. And women consistently have been doing well here, right? But this tool and all of the evidence that it provides is only as good as the civil society groups, as the people coming out of the county commission saying, hey, we saw this change and things are less safe. And this is important to local government because, right? Why is it important to local government? Well, local government has an outsized impact on all of our lives. It especially has an outsized impact on women and girls. Why? Because women and girls are more likely to work a minimum wage job, more likely to depend on subsidized childcare, more likely to take public transit. So when that public transit, the light is out at that bus shelter, and it really feels not safe, and cars are veering into it weekly, or I'm not getting to my job on time because it's not showing up on time, or I'm having to spend 4 hours commuting, right? This all deteriorates my ability to parent my family. Most households that are single-headed households, right, are headed by women who are living in poverty. So for all of these reasons, you know, CEDAW is an important tool to kind of bring the attention of the county commission on like, hey, these decisions that you all are making have a real impact on community members' lives. But only if folks are reminding them of that, right? And these are things that in a nonpartisan, right, completely unobjectionable way, nonprofit and grassroots groups can bring to the table. To echo what my very capable colleague said, I would say it's important to read what qualifies as a lobbyist before you go and speak about anything. You have to reflect on your own position, whether you're getting paid to do this work, how much of this work you're doing, etc. But in general, right, the shorthand that I think about is, am I trying to issue advice on a specific action, like vote yes on this or vote no on this or pass this, right? That's one trigger. And the second is, do I get paid to do this? Now keep in mind, nonprofits must register. Miami-Dade County has a very robust lobbyist registration, and so does Miami-Dade County Public Schools, right? It's always better to be safe than sorry, going back to that first principle, which is that your integrity is all you have. You don't want to get in trouble with the Commission on Ethics or do something that makes the elected official with whom you're meeting uncomfortable to meet with you, right? The Commission on Ethics is a wonderful resource to the extent you have any personal questions, like, hey, I'm a student, I'm a volunteer, right? And or whatever your particular position is, or I'm a board member, what can I do, what can I not do? And the thing that you can do is to reach out to them specifically, bearing in mind all of that's going to be written in a public opinion that's discoverable. But I think that's what I would say, right? The first thing is making sure that you have your why. about what you're advocating for. The second thing is understanding the structure and doing the research. And the third thing is building the relationships. For the 2.0 of this talk, we can get into more specifics around what are particular power dynamics within particular bodies, right? Like at the county commission, we choose a new chairperson every 2 years. That chairperson gets to choose what gets on the legislative agendas, et cetera. So like knowing where you are in those cycles is important, understanding the motivations of folks is important, understanding the committee structures, and finally, understanding the budget, right? Because ultimately, the budget is a reflection of our values. And for me, the best story is the one that's told by all the unfunded and unmet needs. Because that's the thing that we're just deferring year after year after year after year. In order to fully understand that, we've got to know, like, how much money are we working with? How much is tied up in debt service? What's really flexible in this $12.9 billion budget? How do we eat the elephant one bite at a time? But I'm not going to get into that now because I want to make sure that we have time for questions. Is that an okay place to stop?
Thank you so much. I don't know if it's a question or more so a request to kind of help distinguish between, because some municipalities, for example, have rules on lobbying. You have to register as a lobbyist. However, folks like HOAs or people who are part of certain organizations don't necessarily have to register. So I don't know if you could share with folks what those distinctions are.
Sure, I would, and thank you for that, and thank you for all of your capable service in local government. We have a distinguished public servant among us. I would say that the best thing to do is to read the code. The codes are pretty easy to find online. The Miami-Dade County Code, I think it's chapter 2, right, has the kind of Commission on Ethics Conflict of Interest code. It defines what a lobbyist is. But when in doubt, I would actually reach out and call the Commission on Ethics. It's what they are there to help interpret. And you can never go wrong by being cautious and by getting things in writing. As a personal example, when I was a city department head, I was also on the Women's Fund, right, as a board member. And they had to issue my legal department a legal opinion about whether the mayor of the city of Miami could give a grant to the Women's Fund that I had nothing to do with, right? But again, for me, it's always better to paper it up, have it in writing, show that there is nothing even questionable. You don't want to be in a gray area. And there are plenty of exceptions, but it's really important to kind of do a fact-sensitive analysis on your own personal role and your own personal cause, if that makes sense. Thank you. Thank you. Other questions? Don't be shy.
Hopefully my questions will provoke questions.
They always do.
Because this is a team sport, y'all. This is a team sport. So for example, county commission is gonna vote on a budget, right? They're putting together a budget. When mayor's putting together a budget, what advice do you have? And I got more than one question to provoke. What advice do you have to all of us listening to this later? How would you approach looking for things that you want to see in the Miami-Dade County budget?
Thank you, Maria. It's a really good question. And we're in for really tough times, guys. Like, this is a rough time in this country and in our local government. Why? Let's take a pause for just a second and go back. We all lived through a pandemic, trying to forget it because we had no chance to process it. And now we're just in 2026 and time has no meaning, but hey, it's fine. We're all fine. We got some federal money during that time to help survive. And the price of things has gone up steadily. And then that federal money stopped. And then other things have happened. In the last state legislative session, some really critical revenue sources that support our public hospitals and other things don't exist anymore. One of the things that was canceled is the FDOT New Starts program, which is really upsetting because it funds all of the new transit lines, right? It is the way we get a state match to avail ourselves of federal funds to build transit in Miami-Dade County. Super important thing, right? We all want more transit. And so that took away something that now sort of jeopardizes and calls into question, like, what is the future of transit funding in Dade County? And we're still answering that question today. So in the context of renewing federal funds, because those were temporary during COVID, rapidly increasing costs, and then a total shift in our local government where we elected a tax collector, a property appraiser, a clerk of court, a sheriff, and who's the fifth one I'm forgetting? Did I say? Which one? And the supervisor of elections, thank you. Yeah, who's also served in our local government for a very long time, Ms. Selena Garcia. We have 5 new offices. And so those folks are elected independently, and now they are procuring their own software, making changes, hiring folks. And generally, those budgets have gone up as well, right? So we faced in the last budget a shortfall. And for our CBOs, our community-based organizations in the room, we know that at the last minute, right, the chairman working with the tax collector and also the mayor, they were able to find some funds. The tax collector, in other words, had collected more funds than they had anticipated, and that helped staunch some of the bleeding, although we all felt the cuts. But we're not anticipating that in this budget cycle. It's going to be really hard. We know, and the mayor has been signaling this, and so have our county commission colleagues, that these times are going to be tough. What's the structure? By the first week of July, the mayor is required to promulgate a proposed agenda. By the last day of September, the county commission is required by state statute to vote on a balanced budget. Our fiscal year goes from October 1 to September 30th. So what's the best time as a nonprofit to get your ideas in the door? March. It was in March. Why March? Why was it March? March is because we've got the mid-year budget pretty clear. We know where the ship is going. We have a sense of what waters are ahead. And you can have conversations with the mayor and the county commission about, please do not leave this priority out. Or please, we know you're gonna have to make cuts to this thing, but save that thing. Or help us help you. We know that you have to make really difficult choices. What do you think is the most responsible and prudent path, right? Can we stretch those grants over different years? Can we preserve this one pot? Can we come up with something, right? And I would say our county commission has been creative and innovative in trying to find ways to come up with ideas to offset some of this pain and to stabilize some of these things that don't currently have their own dedicated millage like our libraries do, right? But one of the challenges goes back to structure. And that is we're preempted from doing lots of things. Like we can't just higgity come up with a fee. We're not allowed to do that in Miami-Dade County, even if that fee is righteous, according to us. Even if that fee goes to something really important, according to us, because the state legislature doesn't allow us to do that. So our county commission, our mayor, they're working within a lot of constraints. And I would say going into the conversations with that humility and that understanding will advance the cause, right? Because if you come in screaming, there's only so much screaming a person can take. And I've been at those county commission meetings where like we stay up till 4 o'clock in the morning because we start at 5:01, you know, and everyone's just like, please stop yelling at me. And it's like, wait, and that's real. On the other hand, this is going to be really painful for our community because folks are more vulnerable. Folks are hungrier. Folks are having a really hard time paying for gas. And so if you're cutting off the nonprofit at the legs that's meeting those gaps, that's meeting those needs, it hurts all of us, right? In that context, I would add, before I invite more questions, the subject was brought up around this proposed property tax, right? And again, we are all looking for solutions to the affordability crisis. We're all trying to make sure people can make ends meet. We're all trying to make sure that our seniors can age in place with dignity on a fixed income in the homes that they own. And property taxes are one part of that story. And I would also respectfully submit that homeowners insurance, property insurance, flood insurance is an equally important part of that story. And we don't have a plan for relief there, right? And so what's currently being proposed, as I understand it, and it's a dynamic process, is that voters in November will get to decide, right, if we increase the amount of homestead tax exemption. I think it's first to $150,000 and then to $250,000, which represents billions of dollars in budget shortfall for our local communities, right? And while nonprofits can't go out there and say, vote yes or vote no, right? That goes into the red, yellow area. One of the things nonprofits are great at is talking about the facts. So one of the most stunning things that I got to learn in my journey up to local government is Jennifer Moon, who used to be our budget director, would come out with a $1 bill, and she would talk about where every piece of that $1 bill went in your local government. And really, for me, I was like, wow, I can call 911 anytime me or a loved one is having a literal heart attack, and I pay 34 cents on the dollar for that. I'd pay 64 cents for that, right? You know, when you start thinking about it in those terms of where your tax dollars are going, right? I would respectfully submit that many of us deeply value our fire rescue, our parks, our zoning, our public safety, our police, right? Because again, quality of life, safety, health, our public health. So that's on the horizon. And one of the clear challenges, just sort of from an outsider's perspective, is it's really easy to say, this is going to save you money and go for it. It's harder to be the person telling the story of like, this is what this costs. Because so much of Miami's development and growth has been decisions that have been made by folks in 1960s. Who knows that bridge on Brickell Avenue? That's like the worst traffic in America. You all know that one? My brother, yeah. No, it's like legitimately a statistic. So one of the brilliant things is someone who worked at the county literally in the 1960s, a public works engineer ahead of his time, opted to get the giant stormwater drains when we didn't really have the human beings that would justify that level of stormwater usage. But this person was a forward-thinking person. And they were like, we're going to dig this up once and we're going to put this in. And it has allowed us to have the growth we've had. Think about the density of those buildings, right? My former boss from the city of Miami, Zeri Hekwaba, told this story to me repeatedly. He's now the city manager of Homestead. But during the same time, they had a proposal on the table to raise that bridge up so that all the shrimp trawlers could fit underneath. We would have to open it and close it every time. And they said, no, that is too expensive. And I mean, we're talking about 1960s dollars, ladies and gentlemen. So this is like, those $3, I'm not going to spend them. Now it's like $3 bajillion and years of no traffic, right? Well, I'll have to like fly in a helicopter or get lifted by a drone. So these are the kinds of nerdy, hard to tell things, right? The investments we make today for the growth and sustainability and quality of life of our communities are going to be a lot harder to make if our local government doesn't have the resources to do them. And so for each of the nonprofits, right, we have so many wonderful nonprofits in this room. The Women's Fund is one of them, but there's so many issue-specific ones. Telling that story of like, hey, I'm Miami Waterkeeper and I'm really concerned about seawalls or flooding or stormwater, right? Or hey, I am part of the YWCA and I'm really concerned about what the lack of local government support is going to do to early childhood education. And that's what's so lucky about this community. If you have an interest in something, sign up for their newsletter. The Children's Movement of Florida, right? The Women's Fund, Waterkeeper, YWCA, they send out frequent, content-rich pieces, and forgive me, Catalyst Miami, others, that can help you stay attuned to kind of what legislative decisions are going to impact. But this was an open invitation with questions. So, any questions? Yes, my husband. You're not allowed to ask questions.
I know you touched on this. I just wanted to ask you, what mistakes do you often see advocates make when they're lobbying the county, and what would you do differently, or how would you do it differently?
Thank you. It's because Leo lives with me that he asks this question. Because I frequently lament to him over dinner. I'm like, this is so frustrating, right? So I think one important thing is timing, making sure that you're on time for the decision. Like we talked, like Maria's question, like when's the best time to talk about the budget? It's in March, right? Because here we are coming up on July 1, maximum pressure. Right, we go into August recess at the county, so everyone's trying to get things across the finish line. So all of our legislators and our mayor are really busy right now. So yes, today is a good day to start, but it would have been better to start 2 months ago. The second thing is understanding the structure, right? This is not a moment where anyone who is responsible in our county government can be like, let's start a new fund. Girl, we cannot do that. We are shaking out every couch cushion for change. We're really in tough shape. So we can't create new needs that we can't fund. We've got to figure out how to support and disappoint the folks that we already have funded in a manageable way that doesn't destroy, right, things. The third thing is tone, right? Again, we're human beings. So if you come into a meeting heated and you have the energy of like, I don't like you, I don't trust you, I don't like anything you said, I think you're gross, folks feel that, right? Like genuine respect, some kind of authentic appreciation goes such a long way. Fourth thing is talking to the right staff members, because ultimately our county commissioners, they have other jobs. They're busy people, they're families, right? They're raising children, they're working with their law practices, running nonprofits, etc. So it is that staff member that you either treated well or disrespectfully or followed up with or didn't, that's going to ultimately help carry this across the finish line. And finally, follow up. It's not enough to come in once a year and be like, hello, I'm bringing you closer to God. Let me tell you right? Because folks are meeting with people all day long, in and out, all the time. So you have to be succinct and effective, then you gotta follow up with a thank you, then you gotta follow up again. But you wanna have a regular cadence of getting people for it. And the final thing I would say is, if you are a nonprofit that has regular convenings, invite those elected officials to come and share words. Let them open a meeting. Ask them about their expertise. Because that's a way of like developing some real, it's like what they come to something like this and they say, wow, look at all these people who got up and got out of work for this to come to hear about this on a Thursday, right? Today Thursday? Yes. Sleep deprivation. Sun goes up, sun goes down, and I'm awake. Yeah, so thank you, Leo, for that question. Other questions? Yes, Dorothy.
Can you give us an example in your vast history of where you saw an organization lobby really well and get like maybe get funds, or any type of example that you can give us that really worked and what they did differently?
There are so many that inspire me to the point of like tears that I've seen. Like, we're so lucky in this community to see truly inspiring people leading incredible organizations, right? So one that is a perennial favorite of this organization is Lotus House, right? Because Women's Fund helped seed fund Lotus House. And we know what works. We know that wraparound services for women and girls who have been the subject of complicated post-traumatic stress disorder and have been victimized, who often have children, right? Where they get that support, they get healthcare, they get a stabilized housing situation, they get job training, they get access to social work. That's the path. And the demand for it is so much greater than we have capacity to meet, even with the new building. But I worked at county government when Constance and that board were fighting for that new building. And boy, does it make me happy that that exists, right? Christie House, Mujer, these organizations that have been on the front lines forever, kind of telling the story compellingly, are known quantities in this community. You know, others, right? Like I would say, there's every year is something inspiring. You know, when I was at the county commission and Mayor Jimenez was our mayor, and there really wasn't a lot of thoughtfulness around sort of sea level rise, resiliency issues, and so many effective advocates came out. That changed the game, right? I mean, every year you have examples of these, because ultimately these human stories matter a lot. There's effective housing advocates. The challenge with housing is like, some of these things are really long term. For those of you who are early childhood advocates in the room, right? My baby is going to be 3 months old this week. I've got a long time before this little guy can like speak back to me. But I'm planting seeds every day of love and kindness and gentleness, because I'm building his brain and his nervous system. And I have 2 other kids, so I know that I'm going to reap what I sow, either by doing good or by messing up, right? And community-wide, right? The women that do the work at the YWCA, where my eldest daughter went at the county campus, right? Those of us who do early Head Start, those of us who work at, you know, the United Way Center for Excellence, man, it takes a while. But you see the brilliance of those children, the fulfilled potential, and that we're not going to see that for 20 years until they graduate from college and come back to us, right? So those are the kinds of harder things to tell. Same thing with affordable housing advocates. It takes a long time to build those things. The children's courthouse that many effective county employees worked on, that took 20 years to build, right? Commissioner Dennis Moss, for whom Helena used to work, how long did it take to get our Moss Center for the Arts? And that was a labor of love over 2 decades, right? You know, things that matter, things that have impact often take lots of time. But I would say that you can go back to those testimonies and look for those. But all of those people were persistent. I would also say Meg Daly of the Underline, what a remarkable leader, right? And for those of you unfamiliar, she broke both of her arms and she had to walk everywhere in July in Miami to get to her doctor's visits. And she was walking under the metro rail to get to her doctor. And she thought, wow, this is shady and actually not that bad. We should make this a park. That happened like 12 years ago, that idea. And now we're kind of in the completion phase little by little. And my kids who are 10, 7, and 0, I always say, we're gonna bike on that one day. We're gonna ride our bikes all the way to the Miami River, right? From Dayland South. So things take time, but consistency and friendliness.
Thank you. Talk about time. And thank you, Leo, and thank you, baby. Baby's name is? Baby Henry is here. For those of you who are online, Baby Henry 3 months.
He is the most effective advocate in our family. He's a great lobbyist. He makes his needs really well known. So we're lucky he's been quiet, or you would have known.
So this is your women's fund. You can give that to Viviana, who will give that to our next speaker. Viviana is a much kinder person than I am. Daniela is nicer, the both of us put together. They keep on reminding me that you are all human. This is like a 3-hour thing. Stand up, move around, go to the ladies' room, the men's room, the whatever you want to be room.
Shake it off.
Shake it, get up and shake it. But for those of you who are online, I didn't want to leave a big vacuum here either, right? Because then we'll lose you. So I think my meanness has a purpose. And also it's a very important thing that we all take the time to focus our power on advocating and being together. And so we don't want to miss a thing. I don't have any attorney representing me here right now because especially today, when we talk about DEI all the time, you know, we have a lot of things that we need to be able to talk about. We put a gender lens on things to see if systems work, right? And if systems work or are not working, we care because we should all work together to do something about it. We work together with so many amazing partners. Some of them are fierce leaders with huge capabilities, such as the organization for whom the speaker.
We have our poll 3. Please get out your phones, fill out the poll. Are people online? The poll has been released. Yes. Okay, sorry. I'm done.
Do the poll while you let Sarah introduce herself. Welcome, Sarah.
Hi, everybody. My name is Sarah Coleman. I'm the Senior Director of Race and Gender Equity at YWCA South Florida. I'm not going to be giving you legal advice because I am not a lawyer. I'm just a human who really, really, really cares about equity and accessibility. So my presentation is going to be a little bit different than the brilliant women who came before me, because I'm going to be talking to you mainly about voter accessibility and voter equity. So if you come away from my presentation with anything, I hope it's those 2 words. I don't know if the presentation, it should be just in the Mentimeter tab on the, okay. I'm also the only one who used a different type of presentation platform. So yeah, I made it hard.
Here I am. Okay. Sorry, y'all. Yeah, there you go. Here I am.
Yes. Okay. So this first, oh,
Go back.
okay. Are you doing it or am I doing it? You want to do it? Yeah, there we go. Okay, so all of our virtual buddies can see it as well. Okay, so. Bueno. Okay, so some of you in this room are part of this coalition, but I wanted to take a second to introduce something we started in 2024 during the national election. We did a 3-part study with FIU. Dr. Ilchova is right there. She can also talk to you about it afterwards, but it's called the Her Miami Report. And it was a 3-part study where we asked women what are the barriers they face when accessing resources. And what they told us was not surprising. It was actually just a list of best practices. But what they were telling us was very important, and it was that none of us were doing those things. And so the Voter Coalition has sort of
come out of that report in that women are telling us, women of color especially, are telling us we need to consolidate, we need to coordinate, and we need to get together so that our services, our advocacy is not redundant, duplicative, scattered, and uncoordinated. And so in 2024, during the national election, we started the Voter Coalition. And again, Women's Fund is a part of that coalition. FIU is a part of that coalition. If you find today that you also want to be a part of this coalition, come aboard. We want you here. And so you can see we're missing a few up there. Catalyst Miami, Transit Alliance, talk about really great grassroots lobbying. I can't say enough about Transit Alliance, but this is our little crew. And this is our why. So in the 2024 national election, nearly 500,000 voters sat out. 500,000 people sat out of that election. And when we're all sitting in this room talking about how this election cycle might be one of the most important of our, lives, we thought that back then. And still 500,000 people sat out of that election. Okay, so let that sink in. And in the most recent election, the local elections, the Miami runoff election, only 21% of those people, of the 175,000 registered voters, voted in the runoff election for their mayor. Don't say boo, say why? Like why? And I'm going to talk about that. My advocacy isn't in the form of legal and, what are we allowed to do? What are we not? My advocacy is in the form of, that's my neighbor. They didn't vote. How can I change that? Right? I am my community. You guys are my neighbors. I don't care what you believe in. I believe in educating, empowering, and mobilizing. And that's what the Voter Coalition does. This is also our why. House Bill 991, proof of citizenship, or nationally, the SAVE Act. There is talk that this might be on the ballot, revises voter registration processes to require a check of Department of Highway Safety and Motor Vehicles, real ID data related. What? What does that mean? If you sit down and read the language that's going to be on these ballots, if you can't understand it, then guess who else can't understand it? The 25-year-old kid dropping their kid off at, Head Start and then going off to their, anyways, you get what I'm saying. Redistricting, or as I will say, gerrymandering. What does it mean when my majority Black voting district is now a third of the size that it was 6 months ago? What does that mean about the power of my vote or the worth of my vote? People need to know. They need the answers to those questions. And just because it's on the nightly news, just because it's in the Miami Herald, just because it's on NewYorkTimes.com, that doesn't matter. People need to understand what is happening. So what the Voter Coalition will do, we will educate. Candidates will educate voters on their candidates in their districts, who the legislators are. We're voting for a new governor. Who are the candidates and what do they believe? We need to make it clear as, what's clear? The windows in the room. We need to talk about the key issues affecting our communities. And we need to do it in what we call plain language. Just like I just read that, the House Bill 991, there is a reason this language is so complicated. It's on purpose. They don't want us to understand what they are writing. And they're gonna take every bet that we won't understand it and that will say, I don't know, check, or worse, will say, I don't know, and walk away. Because if you think that people who don't understand something will still just push through, you're wrong. Many times when people don't understand what they're reading, they give up. If they can't understand what they're reading because it's not in their language, they will walk away. If they can't understand what they're reading because they have a learning disability, they will walk away or they won't even show up. So making things accessible is incredibly important, and breaking down those issues, not advocating for a candidate, not pushing for one way or another, but just breaking it down in plain language is crucial for our community, and breaking it down in their language, their mother tongue. They deserve to be able to vote in their language, okay? And people with disabilities deserve to be able to vote in an accessible poll, accessible early voting, accessible everything. They have the same rights as we do. And making sure your community, your neighbors know their rights before voting, while voting, after voting. The processes, because the genius women who spoke before me, they're in a level of things I don't even understand, right? Like the structure. Adele talked about the structure and like knowing how important that is. I need that broken down for me like a 5-year-old, right? Right? Okay, I'm not alone. Okay, we're going to mobilize. We're going to organize community events to promote voter engagement. So that means if Overtown Youth Center is having a Juneteenth party, they're right down the street from me, right? I'm going, and I'm going to be passing out voter information, voter education guides, anything I can do. It means our other part of our voter coalition, Engage Miami, might show up to register voters. You're not registered? Let's go. Come on, come on. And we're all going to do it together, because if we're scattered out all over Miami-Dade, it's not going to work. They need a one-stop shop. If another thing we learned from the Her Miami report, if there's more than like 2 steps, done. They're not going through it. If it takes more than 15 minutes, done. They're moving on. So we need to mobilize. And we're sharing what we can do if we're yes, okay. We're sharing what we can do if we're ineligible to vote. A lot of our neighbors and community are not able to vote, but they can still be a part of the process. And they want to be a part of the process. They can give rides, they can hand out water, they can remind people of those really important dates like July 20th, early voting. All of those things they can be a part of. And engaging them in civic processes and civic life only serves to help them in the process. And empower. We're going to create a supportive, nonpartisan space to celebrate the dynamic and diverse voices and opinions of our South Florida community, because that's what we are. And we're going to inspire others to recognize the power of their own voice in shaping our shared future. And so I want to share a few examples of how YWCA South Florida has done this over the years, especially during elections. We talk about voter rights constantly. We push out voter rights consistently, so that our community knows what they are allowed to do, what their rights are. Vivi and I have talked about just just keep it simple, guys. You are allowed to vote. If you're in line before the polls close, you are allowed to vote. Don't get out of line. Don't get in line. We hear that all the time. Don't say it on election day. Say it leading up to election day. Say it 3 months before election day. Voting with a disability, you have the right to bring somebody. No one can tell you that that person has to leave, right? Because you need that person to make voting accessible. So just getting out simple information like voter rights, and answering some of those frequently asked questions is so important, and not waiting till the day of to do it is even more important. No one is a monolith. Many times it's somebody with a disability who's also a Haitian Creole speaker, okay? When you put out that information, understand that intersectionality is a huge part of voting. It's not just me, a Black woman, voting. It's me, a mother, I can't think of anything. I'm really boring. When it comes to intersectionality, I'm a pretty boring person. But I will just say no one is a monolith, so putting out information that recognizes the intersectionality in everyone is important, okay? It's just is. Okay, this is a campaign that we did during the 2024 national election, and when Amendment 4 was on the ballot. I don't know about you, but that year I early voted, and I got my ballot out, and I was in my kitchen, and under Amendment 4 was this long, really, I'll say, interesting paragraph called a financial impact statement. And after I read it, I thought, what? And then I read it again and I was like, what? And then I read it again and I said, what? I freaked out because it was coercive, it was suggestive, and it was misguided. It led you to a place with a lot of untruths. Effectively, it was misinformation, disinformation. But it was also the second version of this paragraph. So the original one was even worse. However, it made it to the ballot, and I realized, oh my gosh, if I had to read this 6 times, how many times, or is anybody actually going to read it? And are they going to actually understand what it says? So I don't know, Danielle, if you can click on the link. Yeah, we trust this link. Uh-oh. So we broke down amendment, that weird paragraph under amendment. We said weird, but what we meant was like, this is crazy. The amendment, the financial impact statement, and this is all ballot language. Y'all, this is not the language of the everyday person. They don't, like, I don't understand these things. And so breaking these things down is so important. Can you click to the next little section? What is a financial impact statement? What is that? I didn't know those existed, and now I do. And now I need you to know so you can make a decision, an informed decision. Can you click it one more time? How this financial impact falls short. Okay, we didn't say this financial impact statement is really, really skewed and leads to a lot of misunderstanding and might lead you to be scared to vote in the way that you planned to vote. We didn't say all that. We said it makes contradictory claims, stating definitive impacts while simultaneously claiming they cannot be determined. Okay, we just called out what we saw, black and white, right? Can you click it again? Important context. A court already found an earlier version of this statement legally defective. Instead of fixing it, they came back with this even more confusing version. Voters deserve clear factual information. Did we say Governor DeSantis is blah, 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 blah? Did we say don't vote for this? No, we didn't. We just laid it out clear in black and white and simple so our community, our neighbors could understand what they were reading. Okay, we can go back to the, thank you. We did the same thing with the Save America Act, right? We did grassroots lobbying where we broke it down. What is it? Why is it? Who is it? Who's it good for? Who's it going to impact, I should say. And then we asked people to call their representatives. We kept it simple. And this is similar to the House 991 bill. But once these things pass, they go into effect immediately, and we need people to know as soon as we know what is going on. So that is another thing I will say, timely communication with your community. Hey, this is coming out now. They're talking about this week in the House. This is what's going on, is really important as well. Oh, I put it down. I'm relying solely on you. And to the voter or the non-voter who says, it doesn't matter, my vote doesn't matter, which is a very real thing. And especially with everything that we are going through with redistricting, voter infringement, and voter suppression, every single day it feels like another thing gets added. how can my vote, my single vote, make that much of a difference? We don't have that choice. I'm standing here as a representative of my ancestors who fought and died for my right to vote, who fought and died for my right to just be here, right? So for me, apathy, fatalism is not an option, but for so many in our community, it isn't either. They have to use their voice. It is a matter of sometimes life and death. And you need to be able to tell them. One of my favorite quotes, I interviewed Amy Keith during the 2024 election. She's the executive director of Common Cause Florida, who is also a part of our voter coalition. She's incredible. She's like an elections wizard, which I'm obsessed with election wizards. And she said, if voting didn't matter, there wouldn't be people who have spent hundreds of years and billions of dollars trying to stop people they didn't want to vote from voting. It is every day. They're not gonna stop. Ever. They're not gonna stop. And so our job is to do what we do best as nonprofits, as service providers for the community we serve, to give them the best shot that we have by breaking it down, making it accessible, and making it as easy of a process for them to vote as possible. And so that is, I think that's the last slide. I talk really fast, guys. I'm sorry.
We have a question on Zoom. Can I
Oh,
read it
great,
for you?
yeah. That's actually awesome. Go ahead.
Is the percentage 21% of folks who voted a percentage of registered voters or of total population of eligible voters?
Registered voters.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Oh wait, I think there's more. Sorry, there are more slides. My bad. I forget my own presentation. So I think the next thing I'm going to talk to you guys about is our Why Women Vote campaign. Wait, I think can you go back one more? Yeah, Community Justice Challenge. So right now, YWCA is about a little under 2 weeks away from our Community Justice Challenge. Every year, we host this free public virtual challenge, and it's 21 days of resources, articles, videos, interviews, discussions, podcasts about social justice issues. Every day, you get a new resource, and it's meant to give you the time, the space to reflect on different social justice issues. This year, there is one theme, and it's voting rights. Okay, that's how important this is. The whole 21 days is a different resource about voting rights. You can sign up through the QR link. Some of you are already signed up, but I challenge you all to spend 10 minutes when you get into the office or wherever you get into, and open that email and just give yourself to the history, the power, the just insanity that people went through to get these rights for us to vote. And it is a very, it's a very important time to do that because history is teaching us a lot right now. You go back and look about what happened. This is not the first time any of this has happened. It's circling back, yes, but it will give you context that you need to understand what's going on today. And so that starts June 13th. And then the next initiative is our Why Women Vote initiative, and that will kick off as soon as the Community Justice Challenge ends in the middle of July, and we will be in full civic engagement. We already are. I mean, we're here doing this, but our Why Women Vote campaign will take completely over, and we will be activating voter coalition left and right. We will be on the streets. And so, yeah, I hope you all will follow along and join us. You can help by joining the Community Justice Challenge. If you are interested in being part of the coalition, please talk to me after. We would love to have you and your support and your energy, whether it's you have a space that is available to host candidate forums or to host public town halls. If you are an expert in government, if you're an expert lawyer, anything like that, we are so open and welcoming to those resources. We need them. And then, yeah, that's my deal, y'all. Are there any questions?
There was a second part to
Oh,
that question.
okay, great.
I'm so sorry.
No, it's fine.
Okay. I see our current largest change is of getting the current eligible voters to get to the polls and vote. How do you suggest we approach people to pique their interest and investment in getting into that voting booth?
Um, I think there's been a lot of nonprofits who have tried to have really like fun things like on election day. You know, they show up to the polls, they do raffles, they do all sorts of games, you know, keeping people in the lines, happy and fun, blah, blah, blah. But I think it's a conversation that starts way before that. How are you getting to the polls? Are you early voting? Are you voting by mail? And like Vivi said, voting by mail, that whole list was purged and now you have to re-register. So if you think you're voting by mail, let's check today if you're voting by mail because you might not be. You might think you are, but you're not. So that conversation about, and honestly, it's the biggest transportation. That was one of the top barriers women told us in the Her Miami report. Transportation. Women are more impacted by public transportation, their personal transportation. Transportation impacts all women in a completely different way than it does men. And so starting that conversation, is this going to be the little side trip that you take after you drop your kid off at daycare and then you go to the grocery and then you go vote? What's your plan? So make sure you have a plan and talk about it before the actual election day. Did that answer the question?
Well, first of all, great work you're doing.
Okay.
My personal view is voting by mail is very, very important for all those barriers. And you hit the nail on the head to actually read the amendments and understand it, do research on the candidates and judges when they're up. What can you do to make it simple to highlight that to the voters out there? Because that eliminates a lot of problems and we're at risk of it going away.
So that was a lesson learned for us during the 2024 campaign because again, I didn't think about a financial impact statement until I opened my ballot. And then I panicked. I was like, no one's gonna know. What does this mean? I'm struggling with it. And so we are keeping our eyes very closely on what's gonna be on the ballot. You know, there's already a couple things for the primaries. I've already started breaking them down because if you know, the property tax thing, I guarantee you, you know, we're in this room all watching property taxes like eagles, right? But no, not everybody is. And we just need to know that, like, for a lot of people, that's not a part of their lives right now. And we have to be the ones to be like, this is really important for your life, like for your life, for your kids' education, for like all of it. And so we have to be ahead of it. As soon as something gets on the ballot, we've got to read it and we've got to break it down and we've got to translate it into plain language. Plain language.
You do to make sure people have that right. Do you encourage voting by mail?
Yes, we encourage voting by mail. We encourage like, you know, early voting. We also materials. There's nothing wrong with a good old flyer, like a mailer. You know, this is going to be on your ballot. This is, you know, what it's going to say. This is what it means. You're welcome. Yes. Anybody else? Yes.
I think you answered a portion of my question.
Okay.
However, I think my biggest concern is when you have those communities that have disabilities, some that may not understand English fully, some who have maybe a elementary school education who do not. I know you said break it down to the simplest, but how do we as agency reach out to these people? Do we go door to door? Do we have forums that, because some of them have family members that do have a good command of the English language. However,
for those astute as you are, you had to read it 6 times.
Exactly.
To understand. How do we attack this? How do we approach this?
So you said it in your first, the first thing you said was, do we go to these places? Go to these places. I've done trainings at Goodwill. I've done trainings at Best Buddies. I've done it don't stop at just door to door, go to these places, because many people with disabilities, even though they are aware they have the right to vote, they live in a group home. And who's going to take them? Is it going to be a group trip to the polls? What is it going to look like? And those are very real things. And we see 500,000 people didn't vote. Who knows how many of those are people with disabilities, right? And they're just not afforded the opportunity. It's not that they don't have the right, they don't have the opportunity. Or, you have people who are not English speakers, who need Haitian Creole. They have a right to have their ballot in Haitian Creole. That's why we always send out those phone numbers. If you have a poll that is telling you, no, we don't have that in Spanish, yes, you do. Yes, you do. That's the law. Give me my ballot in Spanish. And do not be afraid to go to these places and talk to these people and say, hey, have you taught your staff? Have you trained your staff on voting rights? That's a huge one. Even corporate, does your staff, because your C-suite, yeah, sure, they know all the rules, they know how to vote, but your part-time staff, your camp counselors, your teachers, your, supported living folks, do they know their rights? And do they know the rights of the people that they're serving? It's all of it. It's all connected. And I would not be scared to call those people and say, hey, have you talked to your people about voting rights? Can we come and do a training on voting rights? Is there an all staff day? We're about to enter summer and people are doing summer camp trainings. Now's the time. Yes, I know all about that. Anybody else?
Well, yeah, you pretty much covered what I was. She asked the question that I was going to ask.
Okay.
How to, what do you suggest? So
Yes.
you covered it, but I think for me, when you got to the end part about summer camp training, I'm going to be a little nostalgic, but I can remember when I was in elementary school when you used to vote at school.
Right.
So, but they would train us a whole 9 weeks about voting. And then we actually got to go and vote, and our parents would later come into our school because that's where the ballots were cast.
Right.
But we actually had a 9-week semester
Yeah.
of learning how to be citizens.
Yeah, I love that.
And our civic duty. So you got to it in the end. Can our organizations, I guess that was her question and his question, and all of what do we do to break it down in English, social media? I mean, everybody's on social media.
Yeah.
Do we make something for social media to animate it, or do we go to a YMCA and everybody has something like a outing where we're doing a presentation? What do we do to break it down for people who don't understand all the language, don't understand? Just how can we make it practical?
Yeah. So again, materials. They're simple things like mailers. We use mailers a lot, and people are don't use mail anymore. And I'm like, but y'all, not everybody's on their phone swiping, And even if they are, their algorithm might not find mine. They might not get this information. So we just go all platforms, and then we do physical, and then we do in person. And if we don't make it to everybody, we at least know we've tried everything. But I will say, you can look online. There is this, I think it's Ballotpedia. They'll tell you your state's age range of ballot language. They'll tell you, oh, this is for a 4th grade reader level. Some states purposely put their ballot language at college level reading on purpose. On purpose. None of this is random. It's real. I can't remember what Miami's is or Florida's is, but if you are a teacher, if you're in academia or education, and you know reading levels, start there. Start there. Okay, like that's just a really simple trick. Okay.
So I had a comment. Hi, my name is Debria Bradshaw. I'm the Florida State lead for Fair Election Center's campus project. And to your point, working with college students, and I know this intersects across other demographics, when we're talking about gas being almost $5, when we're talking about grocery prices constantly skyrocketing, people are not going to take time out of their day to learn these things. So to your point, and to your point as well, going to where they are. So if we leave materials at the local daycare where the 25-year-old mom is dropping off her kid and going to work, if we are going to where they already are, it's more receptive. I've spoken on plenty of college campuses, and a lot of times when college students tell me is, I didn't even know it was an election happening. I have so much going on. Things are constantly being thrown at me. I didn't even know this was happening, or how do I even find this information? So I do think it's important that a part of the work that we do at Campus Vote Project is we institutionalize student voting. So we try to make sure it intersects within classrooms, within programming on campuses. But then when other organizations we work with want to reach across to women, to migrant communities, to anybody, African American communities, disenfranchised groups, when we are working with those groups, I feel like these forums are important for people like us that have the privilege that can take off half a day to come and learn and be in these spaces. But when we are serving demographics of people that don't have the privilege of taking off even an hour or even standing in line for 30 minutes, it's going to be hard for them. I think it's important that we have to not reinvent the wheel, but rethink about how we do our service to these groups, because it is becoming harder and harder to just take time.
Yeah.
That single father does not feel like researching a ballot amendment after getting their kid to sleep at night and working 10-hour shifts. So I think we just have to reinvent how we go about approaching and educating and mobilizing the communities that we serve.
There's like a concept in disability rights called low tech, high tech. High tech is that kid on the spectrum who uses an iPad to communicate all of his needs, it tracks eyes and stuff. And then there's low tech, pictures. He holds up a picture and this is what he wants. Sometimes the low tech option is the best way, and meeting people where they are, as you just said, face to face, door knocking, that is real. Canvassing is still real. And even though, we don't canvass, we do host community gatherings. We get into our neighbor. That's why I said, if, OIC is having a Juneteenth party, I'm going, I'll be there. And making those human connections, they might have had no interest in voting, but they meet, oh, I met this girl from YWCA and she told me blah, blah, blah. It might be one thing, one interaction that changes their mind. So I do agree, not reinventing the wheel, but not, doing it differently, because social media is not the only way. It's not. It's the fun way. It's fun, but it is not the only way, and it shouldn't be.
Yeah, and I just want to add, I think that, I'm in the sorority and lots of different clubs that we often, I'm part of the advocacy, get engaged, committees. And so collaboration with organizations like yours and connecting also is helpful. Two things. One of I'm also a caregiver. My grandmother turned 104 on the 29th. I know, pretty amazing. She's still lives.
Wow.
And my father has glaucoma. So these are challenges when it comes time to elections. So this last election, when I took them to vote, I had somebody in a wheelchair, although she can walk, but she can't stand in line for the hour that it took us to get there, right? And then, so as a caregiver, right, of parents, and this is another challenge that there's an opportunity, I think, for us to make that easier, but we also need to be able to get in there, right? We do, they do have a vote by, mail, but we also, I think, because it's been so important, wanting to make sure that we're there to do it, right? So that was important to them. So I wanted to make sure I made that happen. But I can say it was not easy. But we did
to early voting only because, again, we don't want to be standing in line and doing all these other things. So, and then the other thing, and as Michelle, I'm very concerned about our mail system because, you know, we're also talking about, didn't something just pass where it doesn't go by the date, the postmark date anymore? And although I did hear that, I think I've heard lots of details about it, but I don't hear it talked about when we talk about vote by mail.
Right.
And why it's important not to wait until the election day, because a lot of people will. They just, I just put it in the mail, so it's going to count. And so I think that those things need to be talked about as well as we lead up to it, because I think there's a misconception about what that's going to mean. So that's all I wanted to say.
For sure. That's a good point, and that's honestly why we also have a voter coalition, because where I might drop a ball, someone else is like picking up that ball, or they've picked it up before me. And so it really creates this sort of like connection of responsibility and coverage, because we can't be everything to everyone. So, you know, like Trans Social, who's a part of it, is coming out with a trans voter guide. Like that's a ball I didn't even think about, but someone did, and it's so important that I'm connected to them, because everyone deserves the rights, including your 104-year-old mom. Grandma? Abu. Okay.
Lisa, great presentation, by the way.
Thank you. Shakira.
Yeah.
Girl. Okay.
And your passion is amazing. So
Thanks.
there are so many things that we've been discussing when it comes to voting. There's making sure people are registered, making sure that they have the transportation. There's training them on what is actually on the ballot.
Yeah.
There's meeting with, you know, having people that are running, you know, candidates speaking to them. So hearing, you know, the community's voice. There's so many things that we need to do. What are, in this coalition that you have created, that has been created, and everybody does have their different pieces, but what would be like the top 3 things if somebody who is joining this coalition that they could help with, that you think that we need to do to get people out to vote? It's hard to say, I know, but
It is really hard to say, because it all comes back to access, like, and whatever that looks like for your community. If that means like ensuring that your predominantly Spanish speaking or migrant community has everything in Spanish, or if it means, your community needs transportation, so you guys work on arranging buses. Access. If that means I work leading up to the elections, the primaries, and the midterms about breaking down ballots in plain language, it's a hard question to answer, because it's like, it's everything. Access. Yeah. Yeah, of course.
Yes, so I just wanted to touch a little bit on what was discussed prior to, and remind folks that it takes about 7 touch points, I believe, before someone really internalizes a message and even considers taking action on it. And so it's really important for us, and I'm so happy to know that a voter coalition exists, and I'm wondering how we can connect the dots between CBOs more to figure out what is the message that we want to give, right? Because I don't think that at every organization there's going to be an opportunity to really educate folks on the facts, but what are the messages that we're all going to be sharing? I think that we need to come together more to have these conversations, because if someone's coming to my organization for services and I mention something, the next person that they go see at an agency or wherever should be echoing that message, so that when they see a flyer, they actually pick it up, right? They won't just pick up a flyer just because, but if they recognize the brand or the messaging on it, they're more likely to then take it. And so I think we have to think strategically about how do we turn all of Miami-Dade County into maybe an affiliate of a voters coalition, and not Miami-Dade County government, but all of us in this room, all of everybody needs to be somewhat associated with this in some capacity, And we need to know what that message is and be able to clearly communicate it
Yeah.
if we can't do, you know, the
We've-
ballot language, for example.
Yeah, we've talked like briefly about this, about what our, like, if we had a project as a voter coalition, what would that be? And I think Vivian and I maybe talked a little bit about like just plain voting rights, like day of, leading up, what are your rights? So that's been a conversation, like a focus maybe, but meanwhile, we're all doing all of our other things. But yeah, I hear you for sure. Okay.
Mike Tatesburg.
Uno más, guys, uno más.
Okay, Mike Tatesburg, American Jewish Committee. I really enjoyed your presentation. I was most surprised by how low the voter turnout is in Dade County. I'm from Puerto Rico. Election day is a paid holiday. And in the 80s and 90s, it was 80% voter turnout. And I just looked it up until 2008. And so I'm wondering, have there been or are there initiatives for that to happen here? It was a beautiful thing. People would you'd go and vote, and then family and friends would have barbecues. It was like our Super Bowl Sunday.
Yeah. I mean, if you want to get into like equity rights and, you know, anti-racism and all that stuff, paid election day, paid day off, vacation day, election day is like icing on the cake. Like if we could have that, if organizations can afford that, if they have the ability to, I'm all for that. I pushed for that at previous jobs, and it was not something that was a possibility, but you know what? It is your employer's legally required to let you go vote. So we do have that. We do have that law. And right now that's what we have, unless you are a organization that, you know, has chosen to give the whole day.
So since we're at time, this is the time we say, yes, our focus is our power. Your focus on voting, enabling everybody in your networks to feel that their voice is important and how to do it. You know that you're not alone. So this is active, like everything we do is iterating. So those of you who are not a part of this coalition, via Viviana, via Sarah, you know, that's what we want you to do. Just like we have #OneTeam on the human trafficking campaigns. Nobody's the boss of anybody, but there are over 100 of us working together. Let's do the same thing in getting out the vote. There are many resources that we didn't talk about today, and we don't need to. I know the League of Women Voters has a great 411, Engage Miami. There are many different nonprofits who have different suggested explanations of the ballot, right? Of what they care about and what it means, what the ballot means. So stay active. We are an active organization. Come to us to ask. We're probably 1 or 2 degrees of separation from somebody who can help you feel empowered. These advocacy trainings, again, will be online. You can see everything. You can play them for other people. I don't mind if you play 5 minutes. Nobody's going to be mad at you if you don't take 3 hours and make your friends sit there at cocktail hour. No, you can use whatever you want of any of the presentations today to bring your point home. We meet every month. What you need to know and what you could do to focus on an issue, a really interesting issue. A lot of our governmental representatives are really active in looking at what happens when we get older, right? So we've got some resources and information, what you need to know, what you can do for our next Impact Collaborative. And then August is always a very exciting civic engagement time, because for several years now, this will be the 4th, I think, we've asked our county mayor to bring forward her budget proposal and talk about where you see women and girls represented within that budget, right? Then the county commissioners go and talk about it. So we focus, and that's where hopefully in March I've started learning, but I continue to learn. So for example, last year we advocated, Viviana and I and others, one, to make sure that the YWCA court care program would get funded so that women who have to go into court can have their kids in a safe, supported area. We spoke about the 50 domestic violence beds not being taken away from Lotus House, but the need for those to be funded. We have huge needs for expansion of the Coordinated Victims Assistance Center, which is your county who's responsible for anybody who's a victim of any kind of intimate partner or third-party violence to have real supported services. And this is a big county. But there's a little one down south. We need a bigger one down south. We need a bigger one up north. These are things that affect your lives and the lives of women and girls. So we ask you to be excited, engaged. Thank you for being here. Thank you for leveraging your networks and for staying over time. Once and always, we're at your service. Thank you all.
Thank you.